which can be web streamed at youtube.com/Town of Camden, Maine. Or if you want to participate by Zoom, go to the town website, click on the Zoom link, and we will recognize you. We'll do the best we can to notice if you are wanting to comment on something, and please make sure your microphone is on mute. I guess that does it for introductory. Tom Hedstrom is joining us by Zoom. Welcome, Tom. And I also would just like to note, if it created inconvenience for anyone, that we canceled our meeting 2 weeks ago. We were honoring the memory of a dear, dear, dear town employee who passed away, and felt that it was best for the town for us to take that break. And so we've got some additional items on tonight's agenda that were carried over. So we've got a lot to get through, but that was the right choice for us to do in memory of Marlene. So first order of business is public comment on non-agenda items.
Before we go there, would you mind?
Right. Okay. Yes.
If we went ahead and made a couple of adjustments on the agenda tonight, not adding anything. However, I would like to propose to my colleagues that we move 9D, approval of the police union collective bargaining agreement. If we could move that ahead of what's currently number 4, ahead of the hearing on the dangerous building, just because we've got so many folks here to do that. And the other piece that I would also recommend doing would be to move the select board reports and the town manager report to happen before adjournment, after the action items.
Does that sound okay to everyone else on the board? Since we have all of our men in blue back there, we okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
So we'll start with public comment on non-agenda items. Seeing none. Approval of board minutes from February 18th.
I have a correction that should be made. It's in item number 7, where what the motion was not to accept the recommendation of the McGonagall River Citizens Advisory Committee. The motion was to accept the report, not accept the recommendation. So that really needs to be corrected and there. And I'm sure there's just a little typo ahead of that, of after further discussion instead of first discussion. That's a minor thing, but the motion needs to be corrected.
Great.
Move that we approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Tom? Oh, all those in favor? All right. Thank you, Chris. Okay. So the consent agenda has a number of items on it, and I'm going to just read them off. And then we can, I think so the first is the renewal of victualler and lodging licenses for Abigail's Inn, Driftside Ocean Inn, Franny's Bistro, Mosaic, Whistling Whale Coffee Bar. B is the special amusement permit for Jason Dopel doing business as Snow Dogs at Barnestown Road, a snowball. And C is Village Green applications. The first one is Bay Chamber Concerts and School for a free community concert as part of the Screen Door Festival on August 13 and 14. And the second is McGonagall Rowing for their annual fundraiser, Row the Coast, on May 3rd. And then we have 2 committee assignments. One is for the Budget Committee, and we have 1 application for that position. And the second is for the Historic Resources Committee. And we have 2 applications for the 2 open seats on the Historic Resources Committee.
Are there openings in the Budget Committee for the one person that's
Yes.
interested? Okay.
Yes. As for an alternate.
Okay.
And that is Marina Sideris, and she actually has
Mhm.
been sitting in on the 2 hearings that we've had so far.
So it's Marina Sideris for the Budget Committee, and then for the Historic Resources Committee, we have Jennifer Gramata for the regular member, and then Janet Kelsey for the alternate.
Right, that's what she requested, so.
I'll make a motion to, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Brilliant. All right, so we'll go on to the approval of the police union collective bargaining agreement.
So we are in a collective bargaining agreement year that the new collective bargaining unit agreement will take, if approved, will take place July 1st. We met earlier in the year, Audra, myself, and Jody representing the town. Paul Thompson, who's our union steward, and Wes Butler, the assistant steward, met. The union brought in, I've sent you a letter that you've had in your packet, and I can go through however much of that you want, Susan. But there were a number of items that they brought up, and through our discussions, I guess to get to the root of it, we wanted to come in with the union wanted to come in with a proposal that put them somewhere in the middle of surrounding agencies for recruitment and retention of staff. As you've heard me preach before, recruitment and retention in this market is very difficult. Our officers, some of them are traveling great distances, and they're passing offers that are greater than what they're getting here all the time. I have staff here that can tell you tonight how many times they've been recruited in the last week, the last month, the last
have?
year. I have officers here that could tell you,
Yeah.
and they're willing to speak tonight if you'd like to hear from them
Yeah.
on how they came to some of these requests. There was a cost of living request from the union that had 3 different levels. Through negotiations with the town, we made an offer. They made a counter offer to that. And I will get the monster in the room out. It is higher than the proposed COLA for all town employees. And if you would like for the union to explain why they got to that, or how they get to that, or why they think that that should be higher, they're willing to speak on that tonight. I can answer any of the questions. Some of it you can read through and see. So we talked about the pay increase. We were looking at a 2-year contract. We ended up deciding we'd go with a 3. Last time that we did a contract, we did a very good contract. We thought that the money was very good, and we were outpaced by other departments within about 6 months to a year. So the opportunity to open up for wages next year in January was thrown out there. And that's not uncommon, that areas are not sticking with 3-year contracts anymore. Or if they do, they leave an opening for wages, because we keep getting outpaced by everybody around us. And that's happening throughout the state. There's still offers. I've had 2 agencies call me this week to ask if we've ratified our new contract yet, because they'd like to see ours, because they're going to go into union negotiations as well. Will we get outpaced again? Probably. We are trying to recruit. We're currently down 1 patrol position. When we put our budget together, my proposal was about 18.5% higher. That was with full staff, to kind of bring it back down to a level that was more palatable. We've decided that we won't fill 1 position, and that's the same position we didn't fill last year, to try to bring that amount down, because we did know there was a pay increase there as well. It's not perfect. These officers are going to have to continue to work overtime to fill that, because the 24-hour shifts aren't going away just because we don't have the full staff. We still have to fill 24 hours a day. A couple of the items that were on there were increases in military stipend, education, night shift differential. Longevity increases was requested, but it was already taken care of in the contract. When you look at our scale, it just didn't scale it out past 20 years, but it's already in there just like it is in the personnel policy. Lateral transfer for recruitment purposes. We've already been doing that with some. If we get somebody that's senior staff that comes from another agency that has the police academy, they're in good standing, they've got 10 years on, we will lateral entry them into a position here at the same level they're leaving.
Mhm.
That's a pretty common practice to get senior staff to apply. Removal of the residency requirement. I have one officer who's with us tonight that came in at 4 o'clock this morning, has got to be back at 4, and he's got to travel to Chelsea tonight. Sorry, I said where you live, but so he's got an hour drive to get home.
Mhm.
As you all know, the affordable housing is killing us. I lost an officer who had moved up here from North Carolina, could not find housing. He stayed with us about 3 months, and he said, I just can't find a place, and he moved back. I've lost several in Rockport for the same reason. They just cannot find anything that they can afford. So taking the residency requirement. Now, we will look at a candidate and within reason, I mean, I can't have somebody commuting 2 hours each way to work, but within an hour, I'd say anything inside of Augusta, Bangor, as far south as Wiscasset, Bath, would be an appropriate commuting time. And that's what we're looking at now. Seniority-based vacation scheduling, the union asked if that could be removed, and we had no issue with that. That just says that if somebody puts in for their vacation, they can't be bumped by a senior staff member. When you buy airline tickets, and this never happens, but it could. You buy airline tickets, plan on a vacation, and somebody else wants to go at the same time.
Right.
Clarification on an FTO stipend. We used to pay just our FTOs, our field training officers, for 16 weeks when they're training new staff. All of them got that because they all had part in that training. We have a number of officers within the department that have specialized training, and we do that so they continue with their continuing education. It makes our officers very marketable, unfortunately, but we train at a higher level. We have officers that are firearms instructors. We have defensive tactics instructors. We have field training officers. The list goes on and on. We have patrol officers. After 5 years, we train them at a supervisory level. So that in itself is a good thing for the department because it does reduce liability because they have that advanced training. So what we did was we took and we put a stipend basically in there for anybody who meets what we're going to call a specialist because they do more within the department. We don't have to bring in outside instructors for training our people. We also assist other departments as they do us with that specialized training. So that's that was the clarification on the FTO. We've taken it out and we've made a specialist certification type thing for that position. Gone through them pretty quick.
Yeah. Any specific questions from the board?
I know what
Yeah,
you're going to say.
Allison,
I know
go
what you're
ahead.
going to say,
Oh, really?
I think.
Say it.
It's very difficult to sit there when one agency is asking for a higher raise than the other town employees are getting.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
is. We get
it's, so I am so willing to look for ways to incentivize police officers is there anything else other than creating a
Can I
different
can I
trust?
tell you how
Because
we got to that 2%? The initial was for
But
the
that 2%?
No.
Is that what you said?
2% more than, so they're at 5% instead of the 3 is what
Yeah.
their request is. When we discussed this, the stipend for the specialist was at $2 an hour. The union asked if they could take $1 of that and put it towards their cost of living. And the only reason they wanted to do that was when we advertised, they wanted to show that we were at a higher level for the percentage. Because when people are looking at advertisements, they're looking at what the percentages are. And that was a way that they could say, to make our ads look better for recruitment purposes. They can explain that a little better, but that initial was for $2 for a specialist position.
I mean, we can argue until the cows come home about how people decide when they look at ads and ways to make that more attractive.
I think if you let some of the union members speak to tell you what they are involved with each and every day, that might
I
change
don't
your
want
mind.
to, see, I don't want to turn this into I really support the police department and have needed them a number of times for all kinds of different things and want to look for ways to incentivize them. The concern is that we've just spent a lot of time trying to get to the point where with all the rest of the town employees, we don't have to go through this really grueling and unpleasant situation every single year where we're determining what the cost of living adjustment is going to be. It's been miserable on the budget committee for years, as you know, litigating this. And now we finally decided we're going to go with this set thing. We're going to put this in the contract, and we're not going to put everybody on trial every year. And so
I understand that, but the difference is this is a collective bargaining unit. They pay a union so they can have the privilege of negotiating wages, benefits, and all of that. Every other town department could be a collective bargaining unit if they chose to
feels
do
like,
so.
and that's what you're suggesting.
They have, no, I'm not suggesting that at all,
Create a
because it
union.
becomes very difficult. But they pay dues every week to their union to be their negotiating agency. When their union comes down to negotiate a contract, they bring their attorneys down to do it. We've been able to negotiate contracts in-house and not have to bring in outside litigation to negotiate these contracts since Audra's been here, and I think I did one before that. We have a very good relationship with our union. I don't think that they have come in, they want to be somewhere in the middle. They don't want to be at the bottom. They didn't ask to be at the top. They want to come in somewhere in the middle for what the surrounding agencies are, so we can recruit people to come to work here.
I
been
get that. I
working-
think we end up competing against ourselves sometimes, though, because we've got Knox County. Where do we lose people to? Rockport, Knox County. And so at some point, if we all play this game, I think what you're suggesting is I would like more of an opportunity to understand more about it's very likely I'll end up in the same place that you are, but the only chance we get really every year to talk, every 3 years to talk about, like, you know, what makes it more fun or less fun to be a police officer? What do you need in order to keep doing this job? I don't enjoy trying to have that only at the union contract discussion, because tonight's not the appropriate place, but I do think we would benefit from, we should all be recruiting, you know, select board members should be out recruiting for these positions all the time. Everybody should be recruiting. And if I don't understand, you know, what is so.
You come down and we'll send you out with the crew and you can get a bird's eye view of what they do every day and what they're experiencing every day. And I can go on and give you just a few examples.
Well, don't make it sound too bad right now, because we want more people, right?
Let me just
It's
give you one.
great.
Let me give you
Come
one that just a quick one.
Okay.
The hazards of this job have gotten so great that they are at risk of being exposed to fentanyl every day. We are mandated by the state of Maine to carry Narcan with us whenever you are uniformed, so you can Narcan somebody if they need it. You know what's around most of those people? Fentanyl. It can become airborne. You can be contaminated by it and overdose by contact. It's happened. It's happening more regularly. They're also exposed to sharps. And if you've never been into a place where most people overdose, there's needles everywhere.
Again,
So the risks are inherent.
I'm not disputing this, Randy.
Nope.
It's that the COLA makes all the difference for that job, because knowing the reasons that most people do their jobs, there's a certain amount of, you know, I'm sure for them, more goes into it than just the money. So I don't want this to turn into Allison doesn't think it's worth it.
I don't think
it's the way that we provide that benefit.
I don't think anybody
Maybe
thinks
I would
that
love,
because it
can we
is
just
hard.
hear maybe from
Alan,
dun, dun, dun,
Wes,
like,
whoever would
you know,
like to come up.
how does that, I mean, and I doubt it's the appropriate time for any of them to say, well, what we really wanted was being able to bring our pets to work, but Randy doesn't want us to say that, or, you know, tell us what you really want.
So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Sergeant Alan Weaver. I've been with the department for 22 years. I got hired October 2003. When I came back from the military, applied for a job in Camden, I went up against 5 other people. 3 of those people were already certified law enforcement officers in the state of Maine. Back then, we had MB&A. We had at least 3 bars, 3 nightlife areas. Pre-COVID, the town of Camden was a lot busier than it is today at nighttime. Since then, you know,
It's been a
bars have closed.
downward.
It's been I mean, luckily for us, for those that work here and those that live here, Camden is a beautiful community, one of the best in the Mid-Coast. We're very blessed. At the same time, when you get young officers in here, Camden's not the busiest place to work. You know, we're out stopping cars at night. Every car we stop, we don't know what it is. We don't know what we're going to entertain when we're stopping a car on Route 1, which is the largest gateway of drugs in the Mid-Coast. That's part of what it is. But also, since I've been here, we've lost 26 officers for one reason or another. In 22 years, we've had 26 officers come through Camden PD and either retire, go to a different department, decide to get out of law enforcement. It's a tough career. It's a tough job. And it's hard to find people that want to do it. Every one of these officers that came here joined this job for a calling to serve the public. We go out every day. And while I understand that every department in this town is important, we're the only ones that put on body armor and carry a firearm every day to go out and protect the public. As Chief Gagné said, we are exposed to a lot of things that other employees in the town aren't exposed to. About a month ago, I went to an incident next to Susan Doerr's house. Her neighbor was called in for a well-being check. We went in, found him deceased. Later on, after we dealt with everything, and the ME's office came back and said, just make sure you guys know that he tested positive for fentanyl. We're in there the whole time. We had no idea. I mean, we could have dealt with this. I think part of the problem with retention sometimes is that before we've had lake patrol, before we've had bike patrol, we used to do a lot of foot patrol downtown. It kind of breaks up the monotony and the routine. When we're this short staffed, we don't have the people and the staffing to do those things. So basically you come to work, you get in your patrol car, you do the same thing. We don't, you know, it's hard to do.
The lake patrol was great when you guys were doing that.
What's that?
The lake patrol was great.
I was awesome. I loved it.
You did a great job at it.
The other thing that I can say is that when we were full staffed, I could probably count on one hand the number of years I've been here that we've been full staffed. I would average about 100 hours of overtime a year just because of vacation time. Last year, I averaged 200, and every officer here pretty much did. This year, we're not even all the way through the month of March, and I have 80 hours of overtime already. There's been studies, everyone can research it, that overworked and burnout employees are less productive.
Oh, yeah.
When you're coming to work
Grumpier.
constantly and you feel like you're here all the time. And the other thing is that I understand the pay, and it is very difficult. And I don't know when there's going to be an end. When I got hired in 2003, my starting pay was $12.24 an hour. It's changed drastically. And unfortunately, this isn't a Camden problem. It isn't a Knox County problem. It isn't a state problem. It's a nationwide problem. And nobody knows how to fix it. And unfortunately, every agency is kind of throwing money at it right now. And for us, that's hard to keep up with. Even at this pay scale, with our 5% increase, we will be slightly higher than Rockport, but we're still considerably less than every other agency in the county.
Have we been seriously looking at all at, I know we share a police chief with Rockport, but truly combining those forces and,
Rockport and Camden?
yeah,
Since the day I was hired, there has been discussion of combining Rockport and Camden. I remember when I first started here, there were committees on it. I can't tell you the intricate details about all of that, but since I was hired, there has been talk of it, and it's never happened.
I think for a while, I actually thought they were combined because we have the same police chief, but then realizing that we're like competing.
I'll butt in to say that there's been a lot of other things in the air between the two towns over the last few years, and it hasn't, what we're doing has worked. We work together. We're still two separate departments, but we do cover for each other and help each other out. As far as getting into consolidation, there was a plan, I've got it in my office 20 years ago, and that never came to fruition after they did the study and all that. So something to discuss down the road. Yep.
I vote yes.
And whether you've been provided with it or not, I do have documents here that show what the surrounding agencies' 2025 pay rate is going to be compared to ours, if you'd like to see it. But other than that,
Are there any other categories of specialization? I mean,
well, the biggest thing for us, and the reason that we took that $1 an hour away from the specialty pay, to the starting pay and increase that to the 5% instead of the 3%, is that when you get a brand new officer that comes here, they're not going to get that specialty pay. And
Well,
so
can't
when
they-
you're trying to recruit people to come to Camden and they can go to Knox County and make $3 more an hour, having that specialty pay isn't going to help someone come to Camden when they're going to make more money somewhere else. So we were like, if we add that to the starting pay instead of the specialty pay, you have a better chance of drawing a new hire than you do.
And,
Okay.
and that's all fine with me. It's the COLA part that's concerning. And I mean, I think they're finding ways to incentivize certain people to come that have maybe not a military background, but just a lot of experience talking to the public. I mean, that's a hard part. Are there ways to be more flexible to give people more who are able to do more?
You can find me some master's degree, bachelor degree teachers. I'd love to have some on staff.
But it doesn't say here that you would give them any kind of a,
They do. They get a college stipend.
Yeah.
Just like the military gets a stipend.
I went to college, but I, don't have the.
We're taking applications.
Well, I don't want to, belabor this. I can't support the COLA part of it. But I do think it would be worthwhile as a town to try to just talk more about understanding the department and what we can all do to try to make the job more enjoyable. I know every time I have an interaction with a police officer, or really I talk to anybody who has, they say, oh, this was great. But unless you have, occasion to run into a police officer, which most people sort of luckily don't. I would love to be able to, I think we have some great people, and that, maybe it would be more fun for all of you if you got to.
Well, that was part of the, in years past when we were full staffed, that we had shifts set up that officers were downtown on foot patrol, especially in the spring, summer, and fall.
Right, I remember
Like,
seeing you all the
We
time.
were
It
down
was
there all the
great.
time, but right now we're working with one officer on duty by themselves almost every shift. So it's hard to take an officer out of a
Mhm.
car that needs to respond to the other side of town for a call and put them downtown on foot.
We would like to get back to staffing levels to be in a proactive mode more than reactive, because that's where we are. Whenever you're low on staff, you become a reactive police department. The proactive part comes when you've got ample coverage, ample staffing, so the shifts are filled, so you can delegate, foot patrols, lake patrols, and things like that. Everybody's working overtime because we need to fill the 24 hours per day.
And just one thing, I mean, the guys and girls who work for our department, I mean, we love working for this department. We love this town, and we like doing what we're doing. We enjoy this job. We enjoy the slow days. We enjoy the busy days just as much. I like being busy. I like running around town, doing stuff, getting into things. That's what we enjoy. I know we get compared to the other town or the other employees of the town, and I'm married to one of them. And
Right, it's a very bad road to go down to
But
try to
the
compare the
things that
police
we-
department with the fire department it's just,
yeah, but the things that we get into in our line of work is quite a bit more difficult, physically and mentally. I mean, we
Than the
are
fire
under
department?
pressure.
Well,
We
it's
go
not-
to way more calls than the fire department go to.
Yeah.
Daily.
it's just not a great way for
Yeah,
the
And it's
town.
not, and I love the fire
ethos.
department. I love all those guys, and they work hard too. And we see that, but we are a different unit. We're a different type of individual.
I support what is here in the collective bargaining agreement. I know that life as a police officer is not an easy life. And if people want to learn about it in 3 minutes, they can hear Paul Harvey's commentary on policemen. I would encourage you to do that. Very, very good 3-minute Paul Harvey commentary. Police officers do face other challenges that most don't. And when a police officer gets in the car, the spouse or loved ones never really know if that person is coming home that evening. And it is different. It is not a Camden thing that hiring is difficult. I know from um, with people in my family who've been with the academy and follow the what's going on in the state overall, that yeah, hiring the pool is a lot smaller. When my father applied to be a Maine State Trooper in 1970, there were 1,000 people who would apply, and there would be 20 people in a state police class, graduating class. Now it's in the single digits, low double digits, and the applicant pool is small. And that is not just the state police, but the other agencies. And it is tough. I know when my son went ahead and had to take care of somebody who may have been dying on the floor, he was sick afterwards, and it was worry from, was it nerves or was it the white powdery substance in the backpack? And when knocking on the door, would the bullets come his way because the lights turned off when he went to take it down? That was his last shift that he did. It was his planned last shift. He was leaving. That was 3 hours before his end of shift. It's a different life. It's a different life for those who have to see it, and to be the A unit or B unit on the sideline. There's a lot that goes on. Police officers have the front seat ticket to the world that most people never see. And much like what Paul Harvey says, if they're not doing enough, they're called lazy. If they're doing too much, they're overly aggressive. It's hard to find that right niche and the right personality for the job to be able to be the person out there who can calm people down. And it's a very dangerous situation. Yeah, I think they're probably the only folks who really need to carry a weapon of sorts because of what they might meet. You don't know what you're going to see or do or experience when you pull over a car at night. That is it's almost as dangerous as a house fight. A house fight is worse. You don't know if that person's going to turn on you, who is currently the victim. If Randy feels that this group needs that in order to be competitive and to hire the right people, I'm supportive.
Make a motion.
Can I kind of
Yeah.
say one thing to wrap it up? So when we were going through this, Randy and I said to them, there's a very easy way to do this where no one is going to look at this at all. We don't have to have this sort of conversation. And that was, the increasing the specialty pay by $2 an hour, because that would apply to pretty much everybody that we have. They were very adamant with us that they did not want to do that. They did not want to do that because their main concern was recruitment of new people. And in order to be able to recruit new people, we needed to be able to show that the dollar per hour amount that we were paying was competitive with everyone else. So, they could have avoided this conversation, and their take-home pay would have been pretty much the same as what they're getting under this agreement. And believe me, I'm the person
Why can't we just
who's-
adjust the starting pay? That's what I don't understand. Why do we have to call it a cost of living adjustment? Why can't we just take all of these numbers? I'm totally fine with that. And saying they start at this is the step after this, bumping those up. The only issue that I have is calling this 5% cost of living adjustment when really all we're trying to do
we can
is
say
increase.
it's a pay scale adjustment because it is
I mean, a
the
pay
same
scale
thing.
adjustment
It's
makes
the same
sense to
thing.
me. Sure, in order to recruit, I feel people are going to look at that more than the cost of living
Can I
adjustment is
throw
supposed to
one-
be tied to something real, the cost of
One
living.
more scary realization, and the reason they want so bad to recruit, between Camden and Rockport, within the next 4 years, 8 of us, 8 are eligible to retire.
Sure, but do they look at that 5% COLA number? Do they look at the starting salary?
It'll be figured into the pay scale.
But do you know
So,
what I mean? Like,
no,
some of
in
it is just
effect,
semantics.
It's a pay scale adjustment, and we can talk about it that way.
So
I would love it if they just could reflect that. I would be supportive of it.
I'm done. I suggest that you approve this. Thank you.
So I just wanted to make that point because everyone in here, they're doing this for reasons that they truly feel is best for the department. And believe me, as the person who has to speak with everybody about pay and benefits in one department versus the other, it was a real difficult position to put myself in. It's really difficult, though, to know that they're doing this earnestly for the good of the department and not just looking at what's best for themselves as individuals or even
Yeah,
themselves.
and I have
as
no
a-
doubt about that. That's what I just don't understand, why it has to be called a cost of living adjustment when that is like the
So we're
trigger
gonna
word
change
for
the
all.
language.
Are we?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Auditor
could
said
say
can
pay
just
scale
call it Pay
adjustment.
scale adjustment.
We'll stop calling it a COLA.
Thank you.
So the police don't get a COLA, they get a pay scale
They're getting
adjustment.
as part of their CBA, they're getting a pay scale adjustment.
I'll make a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the change language to pay scale adjustment in place of COLA.
I'll second that.
Yeah, if the document actually said that, I would.
Any other discussion?
All those in favor? Four. Opposed?
I'm supportive of that concept. I don't believe that this document is actually going to change because this has gone to a union. This has been reviewed by an attorney, all of these things.
So you're opposed?
Yes,
Okay.
but
4-1.
it doesn't matter anyway.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
gentlemen. Thank you all for your service.
Actually find the phrase.
Okay, I need to fix my chair. Somebody very small was sitting in this chair. I'm like on
Do you
the
want to
floor.
switch?
What happened?
Somebody really tall who wanted to look shorter.
Susan, can I have just one more minute? I wanted to introduce our newest officer, Trevor Cardy.
Please, yes.
Trevor just joined us. He's in the field training program, and we're getting him ready to head for the academy in August.
Excellent.
Trevor's worked with the Judicial Marshal Service and just joined us, what, a month ago?
Welcome.
So he was here, so I figured I'd throw that in while we're here.
All right, great. We
Thank you.
look forward to
For
seeing
coming.
you. Okay, so,
Dangerous building.
what's that?
Dangerous building.
Right. So we'll go on to item number 4, which is a continuation of the hearing for the dangerous building hearing at 39 Main Street. Should we, Bill, would you like to kick us off and give us a little recap, or we're,
A brief one, I think probably would be good, and then there'll be some questions, I think, whether or not you want to hear from some other folks. So what you have before you, I printed it out, was the draft decision and interim order that I hope mirrored generally where you were the last time we were here. And to recap, what I did was ask each of you to send me edits, not to each other. You haven't deliberated or discussed it. The purpose was to try to get a document that was pretty close to what would be a consensus document. And it is, of course, still open to other discussion. So we're here because we weren't here 2 weeks ago to approve, you're here to approve the interim order. And of course, the interim order has an April 1, 2025 deadline for the deliverables described in the order portion of this. Since that time, and I just recently received and sent to you this morning a change in terms of the dynamic. We discussed last time what would happen if someone else bought the property. And as I mentioned, the property is the thing over which you have jurisdiction, in my opinion. And we'll be recording the interim order if you, in fact, reach a final version tonight, and we'll have that signed, and I'll record it. And I think probably it's important to get that recorded relatively quickly. The purchase and sale agreement describes a closing sometime around April 14th. I have the right date. April 14th. And this purchase and sale agreement was shared from Ms. Kay's attorney, and as I understand it, with the knowledge and understanding of the buyers, David and Amy Lacouture. And they may or may not be here tonight. They are here, good. And you may have other questions for them. I would suggest that you at least reopen the evidence to include this purchase and sale agreement in the record, because it is an important document. For your information, of course, there's the cost of the purchase, and that may well also be important to you in terms of thinking about what's going to happen with the cost of stabilization and bringing it from a dangerous condition to a non-dangerous condition. The other thing will, I think, if you allow the Baku tours to present or speak, we need to make clear that we're not going to have sort of a awkward process, and that they will make themselves part of this process, because we could end up having to do heroic things or difficult things that might not be helpful if we're not all working together and they're not part of this process. Technically, that just means they'd waive the prior notice we had, because normally when you have a hearing, you have to give people a notice under the statute. The statute doesn't really contemplate a purchase and sale agreement being signed in the middle of it, but we would want to make sure that there's transparency and everybody knows what's going on. And obviously, as I understand it, you folks were either here or tuned in at the last meeting and have a pretty good sense of what has been going on. So those are some housekeeping issues to make sure we have the right parties. Enter the purchase and sale agreement as part of the record. And if you are so willing to reopen the record to allow these folks to speak and ask them any questions you may, because I imagine you have some.
Bill, I have a question. Thanks. Are we able to extend the date further than April 1? There was a question that I had earlier, and we were looking for a middle ground, but instead of going in between 30 and 90, we went to 45, which is not between 30 and 90. So, and in lieu of, if there is a closing date of a certain date, I'd like to have more time for the people to be able to get what they need done. The list was fairly extensive of all the different details. To the plan to have this, that, and the other. I would like to extend the date from April 1st, at least till April 30th.
You folks are
we
able to
able to
amend
do
your
that, is
order
the
as you
question.
wish. Yes.
Okay, so we're able to do that.
Until this thing has been, you have a final vote on this, you can amend anything in this.
So I'd be interested in hearing what the new, it's a new buyer, it's a new opportunity, what the new buyer could do, and in the hope that they'll be more productive than the prior owners, to see what they feel is reasonable, if they've lined anything up, as far as getting those additional pieces that we had said initially, April 1, which I think was too short anyway. But I'd like to hear what they have to say. Allison has a question.
Yeah, I think that my understanding is that this continues to be restricted to no public input. The public is not allowed to provide any input on what might be in the best interest of the town, and that we're restricted to input from the directly impacted parties, the property owner, and then expert testimony provided by the town or whoever we've decided. And what I would be most interested in hearing is expert testimony that says there isn't an immediate danger to the public or to the natural resource there. I was searching last time for some kind of metric that we could use that could say, all right, well, technically it's a dangerous building because X, Y, or Z, but really, you kind of know it's not going to fall down because of this. The real threat of fire is probably very slim. The only expert testimony that we have as part of all of this at this point says it's not safe to go in that building. They were not comfortable sending their engineers in there. They felt it could collapse really at any moment. And so I'm all for providing more time to come up with a reasonable plan. And because I do think that rehabbing this building would be best done with a really well thought out, not rushed plan. I just need something that tells me we're not doing something irresponsible, and some kind of an engineer that can provide that. So otherwise, all we're doing is saying what we wish could be true, and I'm totally willing to go down that road. I just need a professional to tell me that the threat is, minimal at the moment,
Right, I concur.
that we have time,
Fully.
do we have time?
Right, and so I would love to hear from you, because I know that one of our chief concerns has been to have there be a very thorough assessment of what needs to be done and when can it be done, as far as contractors who are available, who understand the scope of the challenge. And then also, we had put in an amount for a bond in order to ensure that the work would be completed, that there would be adequate funds to complete that. And I'm concerned that that amount may be too low. That once we really see what the scope is, that we had put in $200,000 as a bond, and I have some concerns about that. So I guess it would be, we would love to hear from you, to introduce yourselves to us and give us,
And just not to interrupt it, your call, I'm Kevin Hall. I'm
yes,
represent the law.
yeah,
Need a-
We're going to need to.
yeah, come up and use the mic.
Probably best.
You may, yeah,
wanna-
and
I
then you
wanna
can
hear
be
from-
seen. Yep,
You folks.
Yeah.
Not the old.
So
well, he's representing Janice too, so.
just briefly, I'll be working in concert.
Can you introduce yourself on
Up
the,
and
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the locateurs will have separate counsel, of
Kevin
course.
Hall, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm correct. Thank you. And I guess it fell through the cracks, but last June, there was a visual structural observation performed by A.E. Hudson Engineering Group. And they found that pretty much, all of the same structural deficiencies, but they did note here, it says, based on a professional opinion, the first floor framing and structure for the property are in need of a considerable structural renovation, but the condition of the structure is at a point where the work can still be safely performed in order to maintain the property so it can continue to serve the downtown. And in this report, I emailed it over to Bill. I don't know if he's had an opportunity to present it, and we had just a very brief discussion about it, but they recommended first and foremost stabilization. So to be formed in steps. So, logically, there's a process where this thing is going to come together in stages, and logistically speaking, it's going to require coordination. And we've already run into a little stumbling block because of the volume of water going through there. They were all ready to come this week, and the locateurs will expand on that, of course, but to begin a very comprehensive analysis and structural presentation to do that.
Great.
And so we'll be looking to get additional time so that the weather, the water table level, so it's safe for engineers to go there, so that they can pinpoint exactly what they need to do. So we're looking for some reasonable leeway. And as long as the new owners can continue to work closely with the town to apprise them of each step of the way of how they're going, I think they can still meet the ultimate deadline in the fall of getting it back to where it needs to be. But I'll turn it over to them now because they have additional information. But that being said, I'm fully prepared to move forward with whatever the financing requirements are. I'll expedite it in my office so that there's no holdup in closing and the transfer of title and ownership. To that extent, I'm just asking that the town might consider having some forbearance and recognizing that there may be some obstacles. It's not all of the pieces of the puzzles are a perfect fit at first blush. So as you proceed, there may be some little fits and starts, but the goal is to accomplish it. Obviously, the time value of money, they don't want it sitting in a stage of partial completion for an extended period of time because they want to make it commercially viable to recover their investment. So that's where they're headed. and I'll leave that.
Can I, while you're still up here,
Sorry.
just real quick?
I'd like to ask a question or two, please.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, let Tom go first.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
How, excuse me, sir, could you say your name one more time? I
It's
missed it
Kevin
first
Hall.
time. Kevin, thank you.
Yes.
So when did your client, Ms. Kay, become aware that this building was potentially dangerous in the eyes of the town?
I didn't personally get involved in it until just after the holidays. So what she recalls on a given day, this is a woman of advanced years and has significant amount of real estate that is all in a, not what you would say stellar condition. And so I can't put a number, I can't put an actual date on when she was aware of it. I think she knew things were going on probably last fall. And she didn't have occasion to become involved with the owners. What had happened was
She was the mortgage holder, correct?
she was the mortgage holder.
Okay, and then at some point she became the owner.
Right.
And when did
Yes.
that take place?
February 7th,
Right.
we actually
Okay.
accepted the deed this year, 2025.
Would you say that she's been, since the moment that she found out that the town deemed this to be a dangerous place or started to consider it to be a dangerous place, that she became active in trying to find a remedy?
To a point, yes, but I can't say that it was, a concentrated effort to do it. She was working with the owners that had sold it. I had prepared an extension of a note that was to be paid in full in 2020.
When I
Three or
ask
four,
about active, I
Yes.
mean, did she start to engage with engineers and contractors to correct the deficiencies that were obvious in the building?
No, because, and it's just like any commercial institution that's a lender or holds title to a property.
What did she do to put pressure on the other people involved? I gather the owners that she held the note, so she did have an interest.
Yes,
But the owners, what did she do? Did she acquire a legal recourse against them, or did she make any active? Were there any active statements such as if you do not rectify in legal?
the main
terms?
thrust was a financial default, and she was, prepared to foreclose. And at that point, we would have been more active in, addressing these issues. I think she became aware of structural issues, a long time ago, not to the point where, I don't know where the town of Camden, building inspection, code enforcement officer was 5 years ago when they made this transaction. But I know that the owner, Tom, before he passed away, made the buyers aware that there was need there. And that's where the Proc Marine engineering report came from 4.5 years ago.
My issue with the whole thing is how I see it as being a very passive approach. Do you disagree with that?
I think it was passive, but, considering the woman's age, her skill level, and her lack of other support, I wouldn't think it would be unreasonable for someone not to feel that they had to be that involved at that time.
Yeah, I don't really, the excuses don't go very far with me.
Mhm.
We're all responsible for our
Yeah.
properties and the upkeep and the safety of our own properties. That sort of thing, if it's done right, it's planned. And if it's not done well, this is what happens.
Yes.
This situation we find ourselves in
Yeah.
because there was never a good
Yeah.
plan made. If it was because of failing capacities or whatever you're referencing.
I believe she was naive, thinking that the building needed way less repair and she could do it a lot more cheaply. And until the town intervened with an actual formal ultimatum, then, she hadn't paid attention to it. And I'm not sure, I guess she was noticed, but I'm not sure what dialogue that she had with the previous owners up until I came on board in January with her.
I mean, regardless of the town's actions as the owner or as the mortgage holder, at least, both.
Mhm.
I mean, there is some interest in keeping that building safe.
Yes.
And I think it's been pretty well known that that building is unsafe for quite some time. When was the last time it was occupied?
I am not sure. Might have, maybe 2 years, possibly. Is it
No.
longer
At
than
least
that?
5.
Really? Yeah. So as I said, I'm entirely new to this. I did the closing when it sold in 2020, I guess, or 2021, whenever that was.
I'm
And
just very disturbed by the lack of urgency here. And if we're going to hear tonight, if we're going to be asked to give another extension tonight,
Mhm.
I'm going to need to hear some serious urgency.
well, yeah, and that's,
The tide has changed on the attitude about this building.
yes,
And
the sale
even the
is,
sale,
Mhm.
just coming before us tonight as a surprise sale, indicates to me that there's a lack of urgency and communication at a minimum.
I think I spoke at the last meeting and made it clear that the property was actively for sale and we were trying to find a buyer.
What I'm seeing though too is that she's going to retain ownership. So in the purchase and sale agreement, it seems like it's in some ways, a similar agreement to the last one, with 275,000 of it being financed, hopefully through First National, and then 75,000 of it is going to be made in payments
Yeah.
still to her, which is so she could end up with the building again. The fact that she wants to retain any of it, it was just reading that agreement was very, surprising
Was,
to me. But I think I'll give.
that's the financial side of it. These folks can provide the bond, they can provide the financial backing, and they have engineering people set to go. There's going to be a pretty big outlay of funds right up front from them. So I
So-
can't imagine a scenario where they would walk away from it spending.
I'm sure they wouldn't
My
want to.
concern in looking at and I sold real estate for many years, and normally these agreements are confidential, so I hope it's okay that we're discussing your agreement in open. No, and I appreciate that. I was concerned, the only contingency you have is the financing, and I don't know whether you've had a conversation with your lender or not. So whether or not there's flood insurance as a requirement of the mortgage, and whether flood insurance is available on this property. And so I would love to hear from you at this point where you are in this process so that we can gauge our response accordingly.
If you have any further questions, I
Yeah,
certainly
yeah.
say so.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Lakacher. This is my husband, David, and I have been talking to Jeremy about this project since before Janice became the owner. We had actually started talking to Robbie and Larry, the original owners, when we noticed it was vacant, and about a year ago. At that point in time, we had a tentative agreement to purchase the property. We had talked about getting a structural engineer. We had looked at the report A.E. Hodson had already provided, because I had some concerns about the structural integrity of the building, trying to get an idea about what the costs would be. The gentleman, Robbie, which talked on behalf of the actual owner, Larry, was down in Florida. So all of our conversations were going back and forth via phone. I actually called the gentleman, A.E. Hodson in Waterville, Ben. He was the one who had come up and done a visual inspection of the property. At that point, my husband and I went down and met with Jeremy and Clint. And yeah, I think what month was that? Was that October about?
The first one, I think, was December when I met with you and Clint. I think about December.
Yeah, and he had told us, look, that is just a visual inspection. It is not a stamp plan. We are requiring Larry to have a stamp plan. And we have explained that to them. So I called Ben back before we even put an offer because I wanted to see, is it structurally sound? And he said, I don't have time to go back and do it now. At that point, we put an offer in to purchase the property. Janice got involved. I called Janice because I found out there was a secondary mortgage on the property. At that point, I learned that Larry was in default of payments to Janice, and that whole mess had started. To make a long story short, Janice, unbeknownst, I found online when we were getting ready, I had our lawyer in Camden do a purchase and sale and draft one. And I called Janice as a secondary mortgage. She then was aware and contacted Larry and Robbie and said, I'm urging you, the building is going to be, they had gotten notice, both of them, in October that the building was going to be deemed dangerous. So she said, they have the means, they live, we are here year round, we're in the community to be able to do these repairs. Then all of a sudden that deed came back. And so then David and I backed out because at that point it became untenable. We just didn't know where the deed was. It was too confusing. Yeah. So Kevin has come back to us. We've been watching this from afar. I then said, what's your best offer? And I said, basically, we have to see what the town's going to do. So we came at the last meeting, kind of watching everything. I then contacted a structural engineer, Ethan Ryle, Thornton and Tomasetti, because I wanted him to be able to come down. At that point, we could get under the building and see what was going on. He specializes in historical renovations. He actually is familiar with the building. I've met with him several times, and I said, if we get this building, would you come and do a repair work? We lined him up to come. We had an agreement with Janice. Then she backed out of the agreement after that. That's when you had mentioned they decided to put it on the open market and they were going to do the renovations themselves. They've now, since she went to Australia, and her and her daughter said it's going to be too much of a project for us to do from afar. So they came back to us. At that point, we decided, we originally were going to purchase it for the $275 that she would be owed, and it was going to be cash. So she, actually, originally they were going to owner finance it, but we were going to do it cash. Because that's the only way she would do it. She then said, no, I need more money. My husband and I were not comfortable because we didn't know what the outlay was going to be. At this point, I talked to the first, because we have a good relationship, went through the whole situation, the commercial part of it. We have a guaranteed, because we have the ability through other property, we have a guaranteed loan with them. I've provided all of my financials. That $75,000 extra was because that's the new amount that she will only take. And I needed to see what was going to happen here. We are outlaying the $40,000 for the structural engineer to come down. I've already retained them. I have his engagement letter here. I did that on Friday when I did the structural. I've already given him a deposit. He was supposed to come down this Thursday. I'm kind of naive to the process, and I thought, oh, we'll just open the gate, we'll drain the water, and we'll be able to visualize. So I called, what's the gentleman? Dave St. Laurent on Monday. I was all gung-ho to get under this building, get the structural engineer. And he called my husband and I back. I was on telemed. My husband was in a different place. He ended up calling both of us. We didn't realize we had both talked to him. And he said, little problem. I can open up the gate. It's $250 for the fee. You can drain the water, but the water's still going to be there because everything's running off the mountain. We've had a lot of rain. The snow's melting. And I said, oh, okay. Will we be able to visualize? He said, no, you're probably going to be about chest deep in water, even if we open the gate. So I said, okay, how long before we can actually visualize? He said, I have no idea. Mother Nature is basically going to dictate that. I have provided Thomas Eddy the reports from A. Hodson, you guys' report that you did from WBC. And also there is a report, I use Gartley and Dorsey for a lot of our for a lot of our land in Lincolnville. We live across from Viking. And I had called Will Gartley because I had learned that there was a report for the dam that was coming out, that they had looked at the building. And asked if I could have that report
This was
months ago when we first started becoming interested. And I got a call back from Carmen, the structural engineer for Gartley and Dorsey, and said, we are unable to provide you with that report because the town manager has said that it's the report for the dam and that I need your approval, I believe, to visualize. I'm not sure what's in that report. I don't know if we can, if that's even going to help us. I do know that my builder and the guy that's going to do the structural improvements that we've already gotten online, he's willing and ready to do it as soon as it's available. His name is Milton Higgins. He's a local builder over 30 years, an impeccable reputation in the community. He, in the wintertime, went underneath the building when it was accessible. Early January, looked at all of the report, the structural supports and the beams. He said there's 15 beams that need to be replaced, pilings,
15
structural
pilings.
beams. It's not 13. I think you had said that there's actually 15, and there's 2 definite support beams that are compromised. One that probably we will replace. He has a plan, but he's going to work in coordination with Thomas Eddy, with Ethan Ryle, who's from Thomas Eddy, to make sure that that it's structurally sound. The thing about this building is it's a historical structure. It's part of the fire district. So Thomas Eddy's plan is a repair, not to bring it up to full code, because based on a historical building, you have an exemption. And the only true thing that you can do is repair it based on historical standards. Thornton and Thomas Eddy, because I was concerned about the structural improvements before purchasing this. He said I think we talked about this, Jeremy. I had sent you the 2 codes that this building qualifies for that allow it to have an exemption. So it's not privy to the substantial improvement code. So we've looked at all of that. So based on all of those factors, I've done a budget. I've looked at I've gotten tentative numbers from my builder based on repairing all 15, doing those 3 beams. The electric work, I've already brought an electrician down to look at it. So I have a pretty good understanding of the financial commitment that it's going to take. I've gotten the commitment from the bank. The problem is now we can't access the underpinnings of that. When the water goes down, Dave St. Laurent said, I said, when do you anticipate? He said, if we have a dry spring, probably we're looking at the end of May to the beginning of June before you can see the base. Because in order to decide how we're going to put those, the structural engineer said, I need to be able to see the bottom of those pilings. So say we go May. He said when he gets there, we're going to reconvene every week to see what the water levels are. Come May, maybe it's sooner if we have a dry spring, but as soon as we can, it will take him 14 days to turn those plans around, the structural plans. And then based upon that, it will probably take 3 months from that time when the plans are turned around. For my general contractor, we talked to him today to be able to get in and do the necessary repairs. The problem is that brings us in summer in Camden. So unfortunately, I don't know what happened in the past. I don't know whether it was taken seriously, but I promise you, I am not taking it lightly. This has to be fixed. And before we even come in, for us to put this type of commitment into it, that's why I paid the $40,000 for the structural engineer with the plans, because we need plans to make sure that it's fixed accurately. I'm not looking to shore it up. I'm looking for a complete repair of the underpinnings.
So are you prepared to go ahead with the purchase and sale agreement with the timing that's in here, even with the uncertainty about the timing of when you're going to be able to get started on your,
What I said to Kevin today,
Reconstruction.
because we actually had that discussion, I said, what I'm looking for tonight for us to financially commit to this is that I need to be able, I can't do anything if you guys don't allow a structural engineer to see what's there, because I can't fix it if it's not, if there's not a plan, I won't get the permits. So I don't know when that will be, when somebody will be able to get there for the plan, so no, if you say, no, it's 45 days and I can't compare it. If I say, okay, I'll go ahead with that, and then all of a sudden it rains from now until, and we can't visualize that, I lose all that money. So no, the answer to that is no. And the financing wouldn't come through with that. So even though it's subject to financing, and you said, oh, the way the contract's written, it's subject to financing. Well, no bank is going to underwrite something that doesn't have the ability to get in and do the permits. So.
Right. And of course, we don't have any certainty because it is a function of what kind of weather pattern we have going into the.
But the one thing I will say to that for you guys, you're very worried about the integrity of the building, and I completely get that. It was raining. It's not even my building the other night. It was raining on Monday, and I sat there and I'm like, oh my goodness. But even if what could you do to keep the street safe? Even if you didn't guarantee you can't get in there and do anything for it right now anyway.
It would be removed.
How would you remove it?
Well, we can get into that. I wonder, so I guess you guys seem great, first of all, and I want you to succeed. What I worry about looking at the history of people doing work on these buildings is it's what you're facing right now. If you look back at the old records about doing work on the dam or any of those buildings, 2005, Ken Bailey said it was the whole summer we weren't able to do work on the dam because of being a wet summer. And so that's why a lot of those building owners, you see them every little chance they get, they're like out there, working on their buildings. Have you looked into the sediment and erosion control issues and how you would, the tank that is there, the underground storage tank that's sort of partially revealed, and there was mercury found, and do you have a plan for how you would control the migration of sediment, or if you would need to? You've got all these pilings, and then
So how I talked to, I had a comprehensive discussion with the guy that was going to do the pilings and the structural engineer. What we are thinking we are going to do is, as soon as he can get under there and take, because not only because of the main street on Camden, he's going to pre-make the pilings in his shop once we get the accurate measurements. And we're going to pour the concrete pilings. So when they come in, we don't have to, when the building's jacked up, the pilings will already be pre-made, the 15 pilings, and placed under there. And I can't talk about the tank. What I have heard, and when I talked to the structural engineer, he made mention of, like, Amy, I don't even think there's anything in that tank, but
I agree, there's probably not, but
mercury, where was that report? Because I haven't seen any report that said there was a mercury report in that.
there was some sediment testing done in all of the impoundments. I think it was a 2018 report. But even in the absence of contaminants, like you see right now with the Rawson Avenue Bridge, for instance, they've got they're having a heck of a time, I think, but they have to have a cofferdam in order to prevent just taking out the abutments on the side of the river to keep the sediment from washing down the river. And so one of the things that happens sometimes when people do work on even just the dam, you've got the harbor right there, and it sends this gush of sediment. And so
I think
it's a
everybody
complicated
on Main
project.
Street, it's interesting. If you look at I printed this for you guys, the National Register of Historic Places. There's an interesting commentary on those buildings, the Smiling Cow, this building, and Tom's building, Camden Deli. When the fire happened, which made this a historic district, and they wanted to build them all in brick, but these 3 buildings were actually temporary buildings
Right.
that were built. And that's part of the history and the beauty. If you go into the Camden Smiling Cow, the thing that I love, I have all the little figurines, the stick-built buildings. That's what makes downtown Camden. I met my husband at the University of Maine. I'm a 5th generation Mainer. He's a transplant. But one summer I said, oh, I want to take you down to Camden. And I remember driving around. That's my favorite stretch. Driving around by the library and going down. And I said to him, we weren't married yet. I said, this is the most beautiful place on earth. Yes, I know it's a pain in the butt. It's a lot of upkeep. But if you drive by our house, we plow our own. My husband will be the one down there. I promise you, painting, he's going to be painting. We're very involved in our own projects. We're aware. I've always lived on the ocean. We have a property on Harbor Point. We own the road on that. There's a whole, I'm very familiar with, I just am very passionate about this
Oh,
building,
right.
which is why I've dealt with it. And I've been in Jeremy's ear. I need the opportunity.
Have you thought about sending divers? And sometimes in the past they've sent, when they haven't been able to control the water, some people have hired divers. So it would make me feel better if you had a plan for dealing with the water, even if the water's there, a contingency.
I think
Plan.
Jeremy has
Can I have
something he'd like to.
Dealing with the
Couple,
water.
can I just have 2 things? One, I don't think sediment control is part of the document that we have in front of us.
That's
Two-
right, yeah, concern.
2, item G, it looks like we've got a date that's dependent on the wastewater department doing something. And if that's the case, if the wastewater department doesn't do something in a certain amount of time, is that detrimental to whoever owns the building in this process? I would think that would be unfair to put that onto any particular owner of the building about the ability for the wastewater department to get something done.
I agree. That
I
part
would
should
think
come
that
out.
the first part of item G should be dependent upon whoever owns the building, which is provide them access. However, to put it on to the onus on the owners that the wastewater department writes a report, I think that is not fair to the owners anyway, in disqualifying
I also
that
don't
they're-
think that
they're-
we should write a
their
report.
tenacity on the piece. But yeah, there's the wastewater department shall provide a report to the select board before April 1st. And that's just.
And
I think-
they're not in
I
any
think the
position
owner,
to.
whoever owns the building, giving access to enable that, I think is important. And I'll ask Audra, do you think, you don't have any concerns, I suspect, that the wastewater department is going to do a report in a timely manner. It doesn't need to be part of this agreement, I feel.
I don't think we should
That's really
require that in this
related
agreement.
to the sewer connection, correct?
No, it's item G. It's allowing, well, maybe it is,
Well,
it
it
just
would be the
says
sewer
allowing,
waste, That's wastewater.
That's what,
the owner needs to go
inspect
ahead
the laterals.
and provide,
inspect the lateral.
right, but the onus is on the owner that the wastewater department does something by April 1st. I don't think that should be there.
I agree. It's a weird
Ability.
thing to have in the agreement. It's also weird to ask our wastewater department to provide cost estimates for.
Right.
I think that part is just, they should obviously provide access if it's asked for, but I don't think, I agree. Thanks
Okay.
for bringing that up, Chris. I think that should come out.
Another question, I know that you mentioned that you talked to construction folks. Do you have any, Bill, have they seen this document? Has the projected
I
owners?
just got it this morning.
Okay.
They were not,
Oh, they weren't able to. I'm not accusing, I'm just wondering.
Right, no,
I didn't know.
Right, we
I sent
don't share it
to
with the public either.
Janice Kay's attorney about 10 days ago.
Okay, but the projected owners might not have this, no?
I've not talked to them at all.
Okay, awesome. But because there's a part on here too, that not only is it, there are a few things that are important just so that you're aware of. One is and it sounds like you have a commitment letter, right, from a structural engineering firm, right? Well, that's good. Then there's the letter from a contractor capable of doing the work. Do you have that?
I made
All right.
copies.
Next. There's another piece in here about engaging with DOT. I guess, where do they find those folks to engage with Jeremy? Is that through your office they engage through DOT?
Yeah, I can get them the contact number.
Okay, good. And then.
And these were all things, just want to circle back. These were all things
be
that were
quick.
asked for April 1st,
I'm
right?
going to be quick. E is a qualified electrician. I haven't heard you say anything yet about an electrician.
I have an electrician.
Okay.
She did mention
His
that.
name is Patrick.
I fell asleep during that part, sorry. Propane gas company,
That propane gas line does not go to, it goes to the
Buttermilk.
Buttermilk Kitchen. It is an easement over there. We have no propane in the building. And so I'm not sure what you.
so how can these people then adhere to item F? Do you know, Jeremy? Any, Bill?
Well, I think whether there's an easement or not, this is their property or will be their property. It's an issue that has been noted as a problem and therefore has to be dealt with. Whether someone else has an easement right over it, it's still an issue on this property.
So they would still be required to contact propane company to see what can be done about this line that serves a different building.
Right, we have,
To make sure it's safe, because that was what all these things, going back to the wastewater question, that was about making sure all of these utilities are safe until it's stable.
Because if the building falls down and it takes the propane lines with it, that's a concern. And our job is to be concerned with public safety and the public interest.
Right.
So that's the propane piece is something you might want to, if you've not yet addressed that, and I'm sorry if you didn't get this report till this morning, but if that's the way it is, it's the way it is. And that's why all of these things, it sounds like they're already making progress
Yeah,
on these
absolutely.
items, getting people lined up, having the funds available. I think they should have, and I don't know, a legal way, Bill, to go ahead and state a reasonable amount of time depending on the weather.
well, I think this was conceived as a two-step process.
Yep.
To have enough information before you to then make that determination as to what would the end dates be. So we're sort of conflating the things of understanding what you might need to know in order to set a date. And perhaps one thing that you don't know, we don't have before us is information from Dave St. Laurent about a more specificity regarding when the water.
That's the whole problem there. Nobody, ask anybody that's been in charge of this for the last however many years, there is no way to predict this. It's predicting the rain. And so it's only setting them up and us up for problems to, what would have been a good time is this whole winter, because it was at minimum flow the whole time.
And they tried.
I believe it's just that we can't control that. And that is why the plan needs to provide contingencies for how to deal with it at all water levels. Because all I want to know is that they're going to be able to keep that building safe. And so I just need to see a plan that says it's going to be safe under these conditions that we can and can't
There is no
control.
plan to be able to say, you cannot replace those pilings from the water. We need the structural plan. And I agree with you. The time to do this would have been back in March when we had the structural engineer ready to come down and it was visible.
And the contract.
And the contract was
They were
done.
gonna fix them
We
in
were,
March.
we were all enlisted
All
at that
ready to go.
point, but they pulled out at that point. So
I mean, the permitting is another aspect.
Well, and I think too, the difficulty that we're facing right now is that if you cannot get assurances about the work that you need to be doing in a timely way, we're in fact still working with Janice as the owner of the building.
No, it
You're- well,
doesn't it? I'm
Chris,
sorry.
Please.
Go ahead.
This addresses Janice as the owner of the building. You as having a purchase and sale agreement on the building doesn't change the fact that she's the owner of record and that she's the only person we really need to be concerned with at the moment, because all of your plans are contingent on whether or not you can gain access in a timely way. And I appreciate your sincerity, and I'm sure that, but we're looking at a very uncertain time frame given your ability to get in and make the inspections and go ahead with the work. So it's a little bit tricky to figure out to whom who we're asking to make these commitments and to,
Right. Well, sorry, yes, I think that you proceed tonight, certainly understanding that Ms. K owns the property.
right.
And this may happen. And you're hearing a bunch of things in terms of the deliverables being worked on by these folks. I'm guessing they're not being worked on by Ms. K.
And does it matter? I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
by
no,
the
no,
way.
go ahead.
Does it matter, Bill, as far as when a anticipated closing date is or any transfer, or is it just matter of fact, today Ms. K owns the building, so our consideration has to be solely on the current owner?
Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think these folks now have, whether they want it or not, they have a legally cognizable path to ownership. They have a contract.
Okay.
And that typically is accepted by administrative bodies as enough for someone to become a
Okay.
party.
Okay.
We frequently have people who do whole subdivisions with nothing more than a contract to buy it. They don't actually own it yet. I didn't ask this question directly, but I think one of the things, while this contract is in effect, is Ms. K is not off the hook, and we proceed that way.
Mhm.
But I think it would make some sense to put on the record if these folks are willing to be, based on their contractual interest, parties to this action, so that they would then have responsibility as well as Ms. K, under the concept here that they have a
That-
legally cognizable interest in the property by way of a signed contract. There's only so much they can do with that, but that doesn't mean they can't do all the deliverables. And then whether they close or not, the order would be written in such a way that it's effective against both Ms. K and them. So we're adding, we're not subtracting. That's not a bad thing because you have more pockets, so to speak, and more energy and perhaps more capacity, or a lot more capacity.
Well, it indemnifies us to a greater extent, but it places you in a position where
doing
you would
that
be
until-
making a financial obligation, you'd be putting
Are
out
you
money
saying
when
the
you might not.
liability if this building fell down in the interim, before we close?
That's between you and.
No, when you say that we are liable, are you saying we have the financial responsibility of the building and the liability until it closes? Okay. So
No,
you're
what
just saying add these things like we have to negotiate the gas, talk to the gas people and things of that nature.
Mhm. Okay.
I would put it this way, we would add you as a party. This order, as you've seen, its purpose is to create the deliverables and present those. You will, even if these folks stick with the date of April 1st, that's the date these deliverables are due. And the requirement could be, if this is what you wish to do, it would run to both you and Ms. K to say, one of you deliver this stuff, or essentially both of you are responsible, whichever one you wish. But at least it would be clear that that was part of what you're committing to in terms of the deliverables for this board. And as Chris has said, it seems like you're going down that path rapidly. But between you and the Ms. K, you haven't purchased the property yet. You can't even insure it yet.
Correct.
You can't, I mean, the risk of loss is on the seller until closing. So if it falls down, we're not saying you're responsible. I'm just saying that you're going to be part of the three people, you and Ms. K, you two and Ms. K, who are responsible to provide the deliverables. Obviously, if that fails to happen, that will have to be dealt with whatever date you all decide to have the deliverables available. And I understand the issue about how it's going to, when is the best time and how is this going to get actually finished. But that's a problem no matter who owns it. And maybe you want to have more information in the record before you come to that next stage on April 1st. And maybe you have Dave St. Laurent here on April 1st.
I
Not
have
that he's
an
going to
email
read the
from
tea
him
leaves.
talking about when
Just-
he thought it would be able to be visited.
We need something that says how long can the building hold on, not what Dave St. Laurent's best guess on the weather is.
Right, there's
That's
an
gonna tie
objective
into it.
reality of
We,
the,
I just need something that says that there's a way to keep the public safe. There's somebody that if it does fall down, will pay for it. Because if there is nobody that is going to take responsibility if something bad happens at that building, with that building, then the town has a responsibility to the general public. After what we heard was that it's an imminent threat to the public, then we need to be making plans of our own to mitigate that risk. So the biggest thing I want is by April 1st, something that says it's okay a little longer. We figured out how to make sure that it's not, I mean, it's the Great Fire District. If we were told that this building is a fire risk, the document says these buildings were meant to be temporary. If we're not going to at least learn a little bit from history, one of these buildings before caught fire and burned the whole town down. After hearing the other engineer, I wanted somebody else to say, these are the reasons why we think the risk
So
isn't,
just to
like-
cut to, if you want to add a deliverable, that someone is going to, who's an engineer, look at the building and give some time frame as to how long it will be
how long it can hold.
safe to work on the building before it's in some imminent danger of collapse. You want a specific opinion about that. And
Yeah,
that could be one of the deliverables.
yes.
I don't know if it can get done in the next 11 days, whatever it is. But that's,
14 days.
Well, that's also a new deliverable
April
that,
1st. Next meeting.
But you
Yeah.
can't
It's not a new
access it.
deliverable. We were told the building is really dangerous.
But you can't access it.
I know, but that's part of the reason it's dangerous.
How can you do a deliverable when you can't see it?
That's part of the reason it got so dangerous. That's why we've waited and waited. The reason that people delay work on these buildings is because they're very, very difficult to access.
Ken,
I just want to back up a step and say that, or ask, we are trying to transfer this very same set of requirements to not just Janice K, but to the new owners. Is that where we're headed with this?
I'm suggesting that one outcome tonight would be for them to agree to be added to have those responsibilities based on their contract.
So we wouldn't be changing, at least at this point, we're not changing what you're calling the deliverables, but we are free to change the date because it seems to me that we can be generous. I mean, we talked about a 45-day window. Maybe the new people deserve a 45-day window, more or less.
Like
I
45 days.
don't know what that is, but we are free to change that April
Not
1st
in
throughout the
between
document to something else.
Yes,
And so
or
my
the
other-
terms in there. It's just,
Yeah.
you guys haven't voted on
We can
whatever.
change anything we want.
This is not in stone yet.
You guys are going to vote on something, hopefully.
So my follow-up question is, who certifies the deliverables? Is that you? Is that us? Do they come before us with documentation? How is that done?
The deliverables have to be filed with the town. I don't recall exactly how I wrote that. But typically what they would do is be filed with the planning office.
Okay, so there's a document, this is A through H, and I think there's a deliverable for each of them. So there's 8 different documents that would need to be supplied to the planning office.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
But my understanding is really that was what we were setting to say, okay, this is what we're going to need in order to be able to make that final decision. I would be personally okay with delaying most of these deliverables until further off, except with the one deliverable for April 1st of some expert testimony or report that assures us that there is minimal risk to the public and the resource due to, fire or structural instability.
So I disagree with that. I disagree that a new deliverable should have the same date as what the other deliverables had a while ago. This is a new deliverable you're asking for. It needs to have an extended period of time and some sort of contingency on the weather. If we have an unusually X% different rainfall spring, they should have an X% or Y% change in when they can get the work done. April 1st is too close, and this is a new deliverable. 45 days, I
It's
think,
not a-
is too close.
But it's not about that. For me, if it were about just giving these people a chance to propose something to the town and it's about what's fair to these people, I would give them lots of time. But how do we, in our role as to the public, say that what we're doing is protective of the public? The whole reason there is this dangerous building statute is to protect the public. Are you, like, I would even be open to any of you telling me, like, this is why you're not seeing it as an imminent threat. Like, why do you not, like, why aren't you worried after what we heard?
I'm not a structural engineer, but I do know that that building has stood there for a long time in its current condition. And I don't think it, personal opinion is all I have on why I think people should be given more time to go ahead and get these things together. There's no guarantee in anything about anything. But that building has been there a long time.
We heard a structural engineer state that he didn't want to set foot into the building. So he didn't want to add less than 200 pounds of live load to that building.
Yet we've had. Go ahead,
I've
Tom.
heard, in all of my career in construction, I've heard such a thing one other time.
Yet this building has stood there and it probably had more than 200 pounds of snow on it since that person was here, and that building still stands. And so maybe he was wrong. Maybe it was safe enough to go into. I'm not a structural engineer, but I think these people need more time. It's been sitting there for a while in its current state.
Jeremy.
Can I just point out, if you recall, you're correct that the building, I'm only going to say you're correct, Chris, in that the building has had structural issues for a while, right? But we also know at that meeting the last time, a few weeks, I don't know, it was a month ago now, that engineer, when he looked at, compared to the photographs from, I don't remember what year it was, 2019, or maybe comparing it to some of the photos that we took compared to the ones that he took, he saw change in those pilings. So when you say, I just wanted to point out that I don't think it's fair to say that it stood in the same condition or has been in the same condition for all this time, because every day there's new impacts or new potential impacts, and there's degradation to some of those posts. And I just want to clarify, because the engineer did say something to that effect at the last meeting. Just
Thank you, Jeremy.
I just wanted to clarify that.
That's good. Thank you for clarifying.
One more.
Yeah.
You need a mic though, sir.
It'd also be great to see that A.E. Hodson report that's being referred to. I don't think that.
Thank you. And that was kind of where I was going, because I think Mr. Hedstrom made a good point at the last meeting, that it wasn't only the property owner's problem, it was the town's problem. Because this, it's been known that the building was at least for 5 or 6 years in this condition. And then this notice of unsafe structure comes out in October of this year. Could that have come 2 or 3 years previously? Probably so. I don't know what the mechanisms are and what the review of it is, and I'm not trying to cast any aspersions on the performance of the code enforcement or the town. But when you see the A.E. Hodson report, and I haven't gone back through the report and the gentleman that stood here and said I wouldn't set foot on it, the A.E. Hodson report provides span and load information, and it talks about the structural integrity of it to what I think a more detailed degree. And I also wear a lot of hats, and I own a lot of real estate myself, and I build from the ground up with heavy equipment. And I see the building, as the report says, being in a condition where it's still safe to make the repairs. And I agree with you that we've been through an unusual winter, given the last 3 or 4 years that we've had. It's still standing. If there's an immediate, I think the steel post they said was the immediate one to replace, but just even getting there to get something under it for stabilization, I keep going back to that. Not just as it would make you more comfortable that it's been stabilized while they're preparing to do the full-blown engineering report and make the repairs based on the report, the engineered plan for rehabilitation. So that's,
Yeah, there are
pretty much all I have
numerous
on that.
failed pilings
Mhm.
present in the river. So the other times when support structures have failed on that building, they've just been left in the river and new ones added too. So things, have failed there.
Yeah.
Is it relying on the bridge for structural stability? I think that's what the PROC report said, that the front part of the
I
building.
don't see that it is. I think there's a steel plate with maybe 4 bolts in it. I haven't obviously been under it. I haven't done
The
much
PROC
of a review.
report says that
but
that
yeah.
the front
And I
of it
understand
is.
there's presumably another propane line actually running under the sidewalk.
Well, the
That's
sidewalk
news
is,
to
that's
me.
common under the sidewalk.
Yeah, but that's going to be addressed with the DOT when they come in and do a bridge reconstruction.
So Bill.
I'm going to sit because I think I've
Yeah.
gotten where.
So I just want to, we're going off and a lot of new information has been introduced in the course of this conversation. And I'm just, in order to move forward, there are a couple of things that I'm seeing that you've brought up. First being whether or not, I'm forgetting your names, I'm so sorry. Amy and Dave would become a party to this order if they would agree to it, which means that any draft that we come up with needs to be, I would imagine, reviewed by them if they were going to be a party to it. Or
Well,
we're
not
naming-
necessarily. I mean, it's your order. But I think that it would be awful strange to leave tonight to have these people present as they have in terms of what they have for skin in the game and not expect them to be responsible for the deliverables as well.
Right, like if they provide the deliverables, that satisfies the, sorry. Yep.
So that would be the idea. Obviously, we're not at the point where you can order them to do something to the building because they don't own it yet. But it's apparently imminent, and that would really be addressed in your next order. And you may want to consider, if they're closing on April 14th, to have your date changed instead of April 1st till after the closing, because then
Right,
we know whether or not it closed.
right.
So we are in a bit of a state of limbo, but at least that would give us a target for, is it closed or is it not? Is it just Ms. K now, or is it these folks only who are going to be responsible? But they know as much as Ms. K does in terms of what your next step may be and when you are going to decide that you need to have it repaired, but just not ready to make that step yet. It seems like you want to have some more information about all that. I don't know how firm it's going to be. But the water flow issue is important. I don't totally know why someone can't do an engineering analysis now. Park Marine was down under there with, waders and scuba gear or whatever they were doing.
It's above.
Mhm.
He wants to look at the support base of the structures and how they're going to adhere. I took a video and sent it to him. And Dave said that the water.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything that's being said.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
It'll be up over their heads for part of it, and for part of it, it's
I'm
up to
just-
their chest.
If it's that much of an issue in terms of timing, then maybe it just has to get done one way or another.
Right, there's a lot they can probably tell.
That may be somebody
Well-
they have to hire.
All I know is from me, what we're willing, it's about 42,000 for part A and part B of the structural plan and the first part for him to come down, every time he comes down from Portland, it's a substantial cost. And where we're making the piers and they have to do the forms and measure them accurately, I want to make sure that it's done correctly. Yeah, I know, I'm not sure about it, but for me, I want to make sure if I'm putting the money in and spending all this, that it's done correctly. I don't want to just because we're under a time crunch and I get all that, but I just don't see how that could, and how, the other thing with setting them, how would you adhere to the base where it's all clay like that? On several of the reports, they talk about how the sediment is moved. We're going to have to, make sure that the base is there. We can't do that with water. I will say that our general contractor, we talked to him today, if it takes 14 days and we can get the permits in time, he is prepared to do it in June. So doing a temporary brace isn't, we're either going to do it all at once we get the report. We're not going to do temporary and then look to go back in August or September and redo it again.
So the deliverables in this agreement are insurance, commitment from a structural engineering firm, a letter of commitment from a general contractor, a consultation with DOT regarding, we're not looking to have the work completed.
Right.
We're looking for a commitment to move forward. The review by an electrician, which I understand you've had an electrician, you have an electrician, so that should be easy to continue that conversation. And then the conversation about the gas line, which seems pretty straightforward, can be resolved. So there's really,
Construction bond.
and the bond, the wastewater piece, which
We should really
which
be
is a
doing that.
town piece. And then the financial capacity, which you said that you could demonstrate also. So I don't see any, we're not saying the work needs to be done.
Okay.
It seems like, everything within this agreement
Right.
that we're looking to have completed are all things that you're already doing.
Yeah.
The
Our
only,
only concern is, I think that we would want to extend the time period in order to give you, so that you're not expending a lot of money on a property that you don't.
Right.
Right.
Exactly what we're looking for.
what I was going to, sorry about interrupting again, Susan. I try not to. It's exciting though. But, accept my apology. With the only, I'm just concerned that, we don't have, I would not want to have too much in that engineering report that, if they can't get there, I don't want to make it impossible to provide to an engineering firm to have to provide something. If it's just commitment with an engineering firm
That's
that
all
they're
it
going to go
is.
ahead and do.
That's
I have the
all it is.
letter
That's it.
here.
That's all it
That's all it
is.
is.
It's
Nothing
not-
about any of this interim
Where's that?
report. is
So they don't
dates.
have to, when would they need to have a plan, or is that not?
That comes
in
later.
here? That comes
With you
later.
guys. This is
Okay.
interim
I have their
report.
commitment right there. He's
I
already
think part of it
drafted
is
the letter.
them recognizing that that is going to be a part of it. So
Yeah.
knowing that that's why I wanted some of these, the language in about the plan is knowing, so we don't drag you down this part and then not make them realize, okay, at some point, we're going to want a full plan about the logistics of how you expect to access everything and,
But with that, with the piece being a plan, would there be any reason why we could not give a new owner 45 days after the closing?
hold on, you mean for phase two?
For this whole thing, and replace April 1st with 45 days after the closing?
So that would
They don't
take us up
need-
to
need-
the end of May.
No, because
Right, because these new buyers, in a way, don't have even the ability to grant the wastewater people access because they don't own the building.
Well,
The
no,
wastewater
because
part
Bill,
is very
Bill
small part of
pointed
this.
out that they do have a legal interest in the property by virtue of the PNS.
And that
So they
provides
could-
them access.
Yeah, it's just as if you were buying a house and you said, I want to have these inspections done on a property. I've got an agreement to purchase. So they do have a legal interest that would allow them to
our
talk
sewer
to the
ordinance
town-
gives us access already. We don't even have to, like, the town has, that is not a real concern.
Yeah,
Our-
Ms. K also has an interest in allowing access. I mean,
Right.
this is debating semantics. We don't need to.
It's not safe to access
If
the
Ms.
property.
K wasn't to allow access and then something catastrophic were to happen while she still owns the building, I mean, that's not a possible scenario.
I mean, I am not opposed to extending the time frame after your closing. I think there's a lot that you can get done, and you obviously have gotten a lot done already. And if you're able to accelerate any of that, which I'm sure you want to,
Mhm.
if the weather conditions permit.
Mhm.
You know, if we were to just move this out to 45 days from the closing, because you might close sooner,
Mhm.
because you're on or before the 14th of April.
Yeah, we won't close soon.
That's
You
what,
won't close
No.
sooner. Okay. So that would take us out to the end of May.
Mhm.
What's your face?
you're
why
not
are
at
you-
all
okay.
interested
I mean, this
in
is-
knowing when it, like anything about it being safe?
Right.
I
I
could,
think that it's going to be, what I see is that there is a concerted effort being made to approach this property in a very systematic,
Yeah.
responsible way. We can't do any better than that by having somebody say, oh my God, it's going to fall down next week. That doesn't change.
I want somebody to not say that.
No, but I think that if we were to get that information, you're not going to proceed if you get worst case scenario information that says, don't put good money after bad on this property.
Let me tell you, Milton built our house. He's a personal friend of ours. I got him under there before we even put an offer in on this because he's not a structural engineer, but I said, Milt, how much is this going to cost us? Get under there. He crawled under there. He looked at all the beams. This is a builder for years. He gave us I know how much it's going to cost.
Mhm.
Yes, we need the stamp from the structural engineer. I have 3 other plans from structural engineers. I've looked them. I have Carmen's plan that I got on the dam.
Mhm.
It breaks down every building. We're not the only building that has a ton of issues over
Mhm.
there.
That's
So
very
I
true.
can tell you, I've looked at this in 3 different end, so I'm aware of how much it's gonna
Mhm.
cost. I won't be surprised when he comes down what he's gonna say, because we're gonna replace all 15 pilings. I took for worst case scenario.
How much do you think it's going to cost?
I would prefer not to.
Yeah, I don't think
But it's
that we don't-
substantial amount.
That's
Yeah.
really none
It's a
of our
substantial
concern.
amount.
And that's only one.
And that reflects the price.
Yeah.
That reflects.
I mean, we're
the
saying that
price.
you said just a little while ago, you didn't think the $200,000.
Well, actually,
was-
when you read through, there's an insurance bond for $1 million per
And will that,
for
that,
incident.
will that help? So if something happens to the building and it damages something else, what
There's
does that?
general liability of no
Does it?
less than $1 million per occurrence and up to $2 million in the aggregate.
That's the problem with extending this.
Mhm.
You
Right.
haven't put this agreement into place, so if something catastrophic happens before whatever date we decide, none of that stuff is in place, and who's paying the bill?
Right. I'd at least like to leave in place just a couple of those basic things that we can say with a straight face to the town, just like what we asked for with the piers and with the mercantile, and
Mhm.
that part is
The
important.
insurance somebody should be, if you want to go that route, if you want to look for the catastrophic event happening, if you want to just imagine that scenario, the insurance should be something that we should require immediately.
They
Mhm.
have that. You have the insurance.
Mhm.
Did you provide
Can-
them with insurance?
Yeah, I emailed it over to Bill, but I'm not exactly sure what the coverage is. I did that earlier today. You may not have seen it.
Oh, I was,
I have it in here. You sent me a
no,
copy.
the way
This is
that,
through Janice.
just to be clear, I don't introduce evidence. You guys have to present whatever you want to present.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, it's
Circulate that.
not my job.
Can I just circle back, Bill? I'm not sure the board knows. It seems kind of, we're talking a lot about dates, right? We got to get this work done by X, but really Allison circled back to her, or Susan did, that this is all just about providing us some information by April 1st. They, for the most part, have the majority of that information already. And if this is an interim order, there is a final order that has to be written. So if we're carrying this out another 45 days out into May something, when we already have a fair amount of this information already, and my gut says is they could probably get it in the next few weeks, be done with everything. Why are we giving another 45 days? Because we really need to get to the meat of this, which is the order to fix the problem, right?
Right.
That's
this is
how
ju-
I kind of see it.
Yeah,
It's
this
not-
isn't the
it's
final
not about-
thing.
This is an easy thing, right? This is just about, they got the architect, they got the contractor, getting wastewater over there to look at how the sewer's connected is easy. They've got an electrician to make sure that electrical is safe and figure out what they need to do to make sure it's safe. So in case it does fall, electric's okay. Same for propane. And then it's the bond and insurance and talking with DOT. Those are all things about things that happen. Nothing is about doing any work. This is all about
So here's a question for you as the buyers. I would imagine that the answers to these questions would be of interest to you before you proceed to close. So if you've got a closing by April 14th, presumably you'd want to have answers to these questions before you own the property. Would that
And
be
all those
fair?
questions
What
are, the only
questions?
questions
I
are
pretty much-
the interim things that the town's asking for. You've got one, you've got something from Ethan from Tomasetti, right?
Right.
You've got your contractor lined up. We
Yeah.
don't have a letter for that, but I think
Well,
you
yeah,
might,
I met
okay.
with them
You could
today.
get that,
There's insurance out there supposedly.
Yeah.
right? I got that.
There's a bond supposedly somewhere, it sounded like. And you've had your electrician look at it. I think he needs to probably make sure to look at it from the perspective of if this building falls, is the electrical service that's coming through this area, is that safe, or how is that mitigated if this building falls? The same goes for propane, and same goes for wastewater, and that's us to work with them. And I think we could probably turn that around in a couple of days.
Well, then how about if we were to make the date be
Closing date?
coinciding with the closing date,
Closing's on April 14th, supposedly.
on or before April 14th?
Why are
Select board
we?
meets on the 15th.
Allison,
Sorry, I'm just,
I guess for me, my main concern, what I'm looking for is, I am more concerned with being able, what is the date that I have to have the structural engineered plan stamped?
that's
We're not
much
there
later.
yet.
Oh,
no, it's
We're
much
not even
later.
there yet.
No,
That's
no.
why-
So that's my
No.
concern, like, I need to get him, because I can have my contractor start that, and how long will we have for the?
No, it just says a
You've got-
commitment that you will engage a structural
You've
engineer.
you've got the letter already.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else
Yeah,
from the
I'm not
engineer.
concerned about that date.
With the water, as far as what time period are we looking at for the piers after that, where you got a commitment letter?
Right. No, this
That
is
comes
the
later.
interim
You're
order
open to
that's,
working with us on that.
That's the thing I'm saying right now, is we don't know when that's gonna be.
Right.
Whoever's speaking has to speak into the microphone.
I mean, I don't see anything here that you wouldn't want to do
Yeah, we're fine with
for
the
your
curtain.
closing.
Yeah, we're fine with all
So
of
if we were
that.
to make the dates coincide uh, with the closing date,
Or shortly after, at least on the insurance issue, because if they're
Yeah.
closing on the 14th,
Yeah, the insurance will.
they probably will have a binder, but they might actually have a policy yet, because right now we have an insurance policy from Ms. K.
I just want to know what this actually covers.
it's right here.
I don't, then I heard things said before that, oh, if it's a pre-existing condition and all this stuff, I want somebody to say, like with how Chris Richmond came with the mercantile, and he was like, yeah, if this boat does damage, then it's just like all the other insurance policies. If-
Well, we've got liability insurance in case someone is injured. I think it's going to be difficult to ensure that the building won't fall down. in its
I just
current
wanted
state.
somebody who cleans it up if it does.
The property owner.
But I don't think I think they might not do it. I want to make sure they have insurance that would pay for that.
I don't think you can get insurance to pay for a building that falls down for the value. of
Well,
it.
what
In
we
this
did with the
case-
piers, the piers fell down and they knocked out a bunch of stuff. And for the same reason that we wanted to have people have insurance on the piers because they can damage lots of things, this building would potentially end up in the same
Would you like
place.
me to change the deliverable to be an insurance policy that demonstrates that it will pay if the building falls down? Because I don't think. we
I'm
can
trying
get
to
that.
become more knowledgeable, but that's to understand I don't know, I'm not an expert in insurance. I'm just trying to be able to answer questions when people say, why are you more concerned about these private property owners than you are about the impact to the town? I want to be able to say, well,
There's only so much we can do in this one order.
so this
Not every
this insures against if somebody gets injured by the building,
Sure.
Mhm.
a person, but not necessarily property.
That's what
I
liability
misunderstood that
insurance,
too.
that's what
I thought
liability
that,
insurance.
I thought that that was cleanup for potential catastrophe.
Well, we'll have to get a copy of the policy, but I just need to know what to write in the order in terms of what you're demanding, that as a deliverable, because we're not going to have the answer tonight.
I would vote that we keep the conditions as they are stated, except for the second half of G. And I would really still like to give the owners more time. And I would say if 45 days is too long after the closing, I would say 30. These people seem motivated to get the work done. And they can certainly get the reports to us. I'm sure you would make a piece on the agenda if they've got all these documents ready prior to that, to go ahead and say, great, we got these documents. Now let's talk about phase 2.
And accelerating the date will not change the date when the work is actually done.
No,
That is
no.
that is significantly far in the future. So this date is, if we're being generous, it just gives these folks a chance to go through A through H, which are pretty demanding, I think. It sounds like you're most of the way there, but I don't have any problem with that 45 days.
Yeah, and if it happens sooner, it can happen
Great.
sooner. I mean, it's in your best interest to have it happen sooner.
So if I could just address
Yep.
the insurance, and Bill, you're absolutely correct. I don't think there's a policy available that predicts a doomsday scenario and would provide coverage for it. If that were to happen, if the property owner didn't have the wherewithal to do it, then obviously the town would do it. Let's make a special assessment and eventually take the property. But
Right, we
beyond-
would clean it up and we would try to charge them for it.
We would charge them.
You would charge them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's by statute. But as far as the insurance goes, it was pulling teeth just to get a receipt from the Allen agency and then to get that page. They're sending someone out to do the visual and then putting together that part of the policy. So it might be a few days. And with the closing, it could be, a couple of days after the 14th. I don't know, working with the banks, you've been in real estate, Ms. Dorr, for a significant amount of time. Something crops up and, has to be addressed. Maybe there's some little flaw or title issue that needs to be corrected, some title insurance affidavit that hasn't been signed.
So I think
The plan, though, is for her to retain some ownership of it. In the purchase and sale agreement, it says that there will be a mortgage
She's
deed
going to
that's-
hold a 36-month note for $75,000.
Right.
Mhm.
So she'll
But
still be
it's just like any lender, they're not going to actively participate in anything if there's no default going on. The
Right.
bank, as long as you make payments on a building, if it burns flat and you continue to make payments, the bank's not going to come in.
So I think given the momentum with this transaction and how motivated the buyers are, I would feel comfortable saying 30 days from the closing.
And if their closing changes, then our date changes
Then our
too?
date would change.
It's
I'm-
not going to
I'm-
be weeks and
I'm not
months.
gonna look for
It'll
that,
be
but-
just a matter of days.
Why not?
Because
To give them
our
30
interest-
days from,
it's
a matter of days, Allison,
sometimes,
one day or.
sometimes you have to go on without having it's okay that
That's
I
fine.
don't vote for it, but our interest has to be in the public's best interest, not dependent on a closing date, because if this can't all happen,
What's in the public's best interest is having people who have the financial means to make this happen and to not create a scenario where they are deterred from moving forward.
sure, and I just want to know
Yeah.
quickly that they actually do have that.
And that's what we're asking for.
Okay.
And they could bring it to us sooner. But I think that in fairness, to do 30 days from the closing for final receipt of all of these items.
Is that a consensus on that item?
I just want to know how we handle it though, if the closing changes, and because we're saying we're going to file this with the Registry of Deeds.
We're not going to say 30 days from closing. We're going to put a date in.
Oh, thank you.
Can we actually hear from the owners? Would that be possible? How soon? From the potential owners, excuse me. I like the sense of urgency I hear from the potential owners. And I don't think the A through H list is all that onerous, to be honest. We're not asking for specific plans. Could we ask them how soon they think they could get these documents to us?
I feel I feel like we're almost there. The only one I'm not sure about is the DPW. What does that entail?
that's-
DOT.
Oh, DOT. That's
The
meeting
DOT.
with them to talk to them about the connection that
The
this building
bracket,
has.
the
and how
bracket.
that's going to get removed when you do your work.
Yeah,
That's all it
I
is, to
just
engage
don't,
them.
that's the only one I don't know what that involves, so.
Meet at the same time, an engineer would be there.
Okay, so yeah, so, okay, so if the engineer, depending on the weather, that's the only one that I am uncertain of.
Right, but from my perspective, if I was on the board, I would look at it in the same way that you've engaged DOT, much like you've engaged Thornton Thomas City.
Okay.
You've engaged your contractor. There's a plan. So if you put something, if DOT provides you something that says, all right, we're going to work with you. Once you have the ability to drain, that water is able to drain down, we'll meet with you when your engineer's there.
Okay.
We'll look at it. To me, from my perspective, that is
I don't think we even need that. They've already done their inspections. It's just that DOT needs to inform them that there's going to need to be, that the building's going to need to be disconnected.
Okay,
And then I just want to know that your engineer, as they're planning for all of this, that they've factored that in, because
Okay.
the PROC report didn't seem to factor that in.
okay.
So it just making sure that you guys know what you're getting yourselves into.
Yeah.
That's what I
And
ultimately
maybe
want to
what
know.
I'll do, if you wouldn't mind, is when the structural engineer plans on coming down, I'll facilitate Jeremy to make sure we've checked off everything that you guys are looking for. Yeah, so I feel very comfortable on the 30 days after closing.
Oh, could you do it sooner than that?
Let's just keep it at that, because I don't, I feel like I've checked off everything except the DOT. So I'm just concerned with getting the structural engineer down there and being able to do but I can probably do it sooner, but I'm saying for you guys to put a hard and fast date on, let's, keep
Would
it at,
appreciate it if you kept it to 30.
yeah. I just think that's probably
I personally don't feel comfortable with that, but I think my colleagues do, and that will prevail.
So.
well, if you
May-
wanted to put it for 30, but I give you my assurances that I'll be diligently providing you with things in the interim and,
Yeah, and as things are completed and they're forwarded to us, that will be more
I
comfort
think
for
we've
us.
provided 3 out of them. I've just given you the copies of them today. So I'll be coming down and giving you,
I think 30 gets you to the 13th, which is your next select board meeting.
Okay.
In May, the second one in May.
Actually, is that, no,
The first one?
6th and the
yep,
20th.
The 20th, 6th and the 20th. So May 13th is like 30 days from the 14th.
Well, by doing the 13th, it allows time to get the documents into the packet.
Yeah.
And because you set the agenda, I believe, on that Friday. So
Yep.
you'd have documents for the packet, you'd have documents for the agenda.
Okay, and we could sign off
And we
on-
could say, awesome, and we move on to the next part
Okay,
of that.
so by the 13th
yep, okay.
of May.
Would we have 7 out of 8 possibly? Like sooner than that? is
Yes,
what I'm
yes,
hearing?
yes.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
you
I
would
like
have that
sense.
within,
That's
I think you would I could provide that before closing, honestly. I pretty much have all of that. I just want to read through it because that's the first time I've seen it today. I'm just hearing about this. So I'd probably be able to check that off before that. I've been working on this for a while, so I'll probably,
And now none of this is, there's still all the other part of all the permitting that has nothing to do with the select board, that all of the other agencies that do the NERPA and the Army Corps and all
we
of
don't
those are
need
the
the
ones that
Army
are going to
Corps.
require the sedimentation, erosion control plan, all of that stuff.
we don't
Yeah,
know.
We're
we'll
not-
make sure, Allison, we'll make sure that there's an erosion control plan as part before we permit the project. I will touch base on, I just wanted to
But
circle
this
back
goes
to
through
something.
NERPA, right?
Likely, I don't know how DEP is going to handle this. My gut says is if they're going to do a replacement for a replacement, they may just, I don't want to speak for DEP, but my gut says is they'll issue a permit very quickly to do a replacement for a replacement in this condition. It's my gut, very quickly. They have not been, I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
want
but
to go there.
there's,
Can I just circle back to something Amy said about the historic review? She is correct there, and her engineer is correct. There is a section in the International Existing Building Code on historic buildings in flood zones that exempts them from what we call substantial improvements and meeting up to a certain code standard. And that it's true, there is an exemption in there, and that does apply in this case. However, our flood, and I've shared this with Amy, and I'm sure she shared it with her engineer. There is a provision in our local flood code that says it doesn't give you a blanket exemption. It says that you need to go to the Board of Appeals for a variance for them to not call it, for it to not be called a substantial improvement. So they'll have to go, and it's similar standards that the building code just gives you a blanket exemption with these couple of conditions. Those same conditions are in our actual flood ordinance, but I can't just say, yep, you meet those conditions and we're just going to issue a permit. They'll have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get a variance from that substantial improvement, but it is definitely allowed and provided for in our flood code.
Right.
Just sharing with, because I just want to clarify what Amy said. She was accurate, but there's a second caveat to that.
Right, and that's just the floodplain ordinance. It doesn't, our historic building doesn't have the right to be dangerous in every way or out of compliance with code in every
Correct.
way. They're still dangling extension cords into the water and dripping sewage from broken pipes and,
Okay, all right. I think we've got the framework and we're going to see it.
Motion and a second on the.
Hang on.
Well,
Yeah,
we're-
go ahead, Bill.
I
Yeah.
think in terms of what should happen next is, depending on what you're about to tell me, I will actually leave this dais and I will go edit this. And I will bring it back for signature tonight. And to understand what you're about to get into, I will reference the fact that there's now another piece of evidence, which is a purchase and sale agreement. Reference the fact that these folks have appeared and presented information that they are going to be parties to this interim order, and that if they actually purchase the property, they will continue to be parties to this process, but that you're accepting that you're going to be parties, and I don't have to give you notice that we gave to Ms. K way back when. Ms. K is going to have to stay in the game, apparently, because it looks like she's going to be a mortgage holder, but that won't matter because the order will run against her. But with that understanding of the edits, and you also want me to take out the second sentence about wastewater, I put that in because I thought that was a reliable way to get a report, but I can take that out.
Can't provide cost
I think the
estimates for,
date, wasn't that the date issue that Chris had?
Yeah.
So they still have to get us that same information by May
13.
May
13th.
But I don't want
Hang on.
something bad to
sense to
happen to
take-
the owners because the wastewater people didn't do it. The only thing that should be incumbent upon the owners, I believe, in G, is that they provided access.
Right, you said take out the second sentence.
Take
I
out
don't know
the
how,
second sentence.
where they're going to get access. I mean, they want access too, but it's like with a kayak or,
Okay, so I think that's the plan. I'm going to go edit accordingly. And would you please actually say, Amy, yes, we really want to be a party to this interim
Yes, I
order.
really want to be a part of it.
So,
Okay, no, I'm sorry.
so we'll do that and make it clear. And we've captured everybody and we'll see what happens on April 14th. And the dates I have are, the deliverables are due May 13th. And this matter, you're going to vote in a second to say that it's continued until May 20th. Is that right?
Yes.
see, that's what I was asking for, was a date, not just us putting it in
Okay.
the agreement that
We
it's.
got it. Now you got it.
So that's the way this will run in terms of the dates and when they're back again. So April 1st goes away, it becomes May 13th. I'm sorry, it becomes May 20th, but May 13th will be the date of deliverables.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go clean that up so that you guys can
Thank you.
Okay,
sign that tonight.
okay,
And we'll get it recorded.
okay.
So every place that it says JNSAK, you'll add another.
I'm going to add a separate paragraph to describe them. I'll keep this pretty much the same, except their paragraph will explain what just happened.
Okay,
Okay,
brilliant.
is that all set?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
I'll go do some homework.
All right,
This poor guy has followed us 2 weeks and I said, oh, it's going to be very quick.
all right, let's move on to our other very patient group, the amending Chapter 194 of pesticides and herbicides. Now, I warned you.
We should have let these people go before like the police, but
I know, I warned them it could be a while.
You're off, your mic's not on.
All right.
But now they're really informed about all the other issues.
Informed.
All right, thank you. I drafted a memo for you and I
Right.
prepared amendments to Chapter 194. We met back, when did we meet? January 7th.
Right.
Based on some concerns, I went back to look at the packet. There was really nothing in the packet on January 7th about this. So we were meeting to kind of discuss some concerns that the community's heard. I think you guys have heard from, I heard certainly from licensed applicators, and then there were other customers here in town, residents that had concerns about what the Chapter 194 was going to do to the cost, primarily the cost of applications in town. And then we also heard, I heard, and I think you heard too, about the cost, not only financial costs, but the, litter and all sorts of things with the number of signs. And then we have heard some concerns about, wood boring insects, emergency applications that might be needed for like stinging insects. We also heard concerns about, exempting 25B, which are FIFRA exempt applications. And so we heard about those things. I've spoken to at least 10 licensed applicators that runs the gamut from very small outfits to very large outfits. Bartlett Tree actually reached out to me. I don't know if anyone knows who Bartlett Tree is, but they are international arboriculture tree service that do a lot of research. They're way into this, way deep. So they heard about this. And then we have Modern Pest here, and we've got, other folks here as well. I've spoken to most all of them, provided them kind of continual updates on where this was going, and what the final draft does. Then this is a public hearing. We tweaked, I'm just going to go through, it's 2 pages, right? We tweaked who would be, who's in a butter. So there's a new definition for direct abutters. The state had concerns about impact on, they thought it was on violated state law and the main right to farm law because we didn't have an exemption carve out for agricultural applicators. I told the state, well, I think I disagree with you because we are not restricting the use of applications in town. This is just a notification. The state kind of back and forth with me on that. So I have exempted agricultural applicators. There are 2 agricultural applications in town. One was, I think the beverage farm was one, and then there's another farm, an old farm up on Route 1, the old historic house farm. Before you go down Springbrook Hill on the left, they don't even do anything there anymore, and the beverage farm is no longer going commercial concern. So there are no commercial applicators, licensed people in town doing any business, but so I did include it, although we don't have any. In talking with Bartlett Tree, they had their scientists and people, researchers review the code and what we were trying to get to. That's why I included some wording at the end of pesticide. The term does not include any phosphorus, P2O5 free fertilization applications that meet or exceed ANSI standards with at least 50% nitrogen being water insoluble or controlled release. This includes organic applications. They thought that was very important. I don't know what all that means other than there are applicators that use fertilizers that this didn't fall into, but there are some applications that are like weed and feed type of applications, and Bartlett Tree thought this was a great way to protect, because I talked to them about water quality and our concerns for the river, Maguntacook Lake, Hosmer Pond, and people treating and licensed applicators doing like broad application of lawns there. They thought this was an appropriate way to get at that. Those other things would get picked up if they were not phosphorus-free fertilization. That makes sense to you. We tweaked the notice that how they're going to do this. We heard multiple times that the notice was going to be problematic. especially for instances where some of these applicators have like monthly service contracts. So are we really going to make them do a notice to us and the abutter every single month? So I wrote in here a provision that allows those people that have seasonal contracts to just provide a notice annually to us and to the abutter. It still needs to lay out what the kind of the regime is, like, okay, we're going to be at this property on or about X date monthly. Everyone will still get, the signs will still go up, so there'll still be a notification, and at least it's now on everyone's radar that, oh, my neighbor does have an application that gets done monthly, and they'll at least know what it is. So I think that's a very appropriate and a good way to address their concerns. We tweaked in the notice content. We had proposed, they had to provide the proposed date and time of the application. I tweaked it to say the approximate or anticipated date or dates. And that gives people flexibility to deal with wet weather events, windy days, which they can't apply those. So if they send a notice out that says we're going to be here on the 12th and it's raining, all of a sudden, you know, it's got to start all over. That's not fair. So there's an anticipated date piece in there. We changed, removed the at least 30 minutes before when signage need to be placed. It just says now that prior to application, signage needs to be placed. So that can happen 1 minute before, 10 minutes before, or 30 minutes before. It just didn't need to make it be 30 minutes before. What I was told by some of the applicators is that they were going to have an employee go and post signs before the crew came to actually apply, because otherwise they're sitting there waiting for 30 minutes before they actually go do their work. So I think that helps a lot. Signage, I think we all heard about the concerns about 50 feet, every 50 feet. We went to 200 feet and along developed portions of properties, and removed the 1 square foot size requirement. That was overly, it didn't match up. Again, it doesn't match up with a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. They're going to have to get special signage done. So now there's no size limit or size requirement. They just have to provide the information as required on that sign. It takes the maintenance of the signs, meaning maintenance of the signs, like they have to stay up for the 7 days. It removes that from being on the licensed applicator to fall on the property owner. I think every licensed applicator I've talked to said the ownership of the property, they remove those signs as soon as possible, or their lawnmowers do, or someone does. But maintaining those for the time required is now the responsibility of the landowner. Certainly can't really expect licensed applicators to do it. And then we did expanded the exempt applications to include those 25B pesticides. Another Bartlett Tree suggested, and it made sense to me, and after talking to other arborists and pesticide applicators, that does not apply, nor shall these requirements apply to the application of pesticides via any root flare or trunk injection application via macro or micro injection. And these would be injections into trees. A lot of the brown tail moth is treated that way with tree injection. And that's it. Those are the proposed changes. I heard, again, I've shared this with a lot of people throughout this process. People have been very pleased. Since he's not here, and then I think you can open it up. You can want to ask questions of me, or do you want to go right to public comment? Anyone?
Any questions from the board?
Let's listen to public comment, and then if I have questions after that, then.
So before you do that, can I read a comment I received from someone just while I'm up here, and then we can let Evan Frace from Greener Grounds Tick Control reached out to me. As soon as this got passed by voters, he was really concerned. Same way I think, Paul is concerned, and the other folks that do deal with ticks. He very concerned. He was not here tonight, but he wanted me to share this with you. Dear members of the select board, I want to thank you for considering the amendments to chapter 194. I believe that these changes will address the concerns of applicators and townspeople while strengthening the requirements already in place statewide. While I believe the original ordinance was written with best of intentions, the unintended consequences would be detrimental to both people and the environment. I appreciate the work of Mr. Martin and the board to understand these unintended consequences and the work that has been done to amend this ordinance between now and June. I hope that we can work together to educate the public on proper pesticide use and the importance of professional applications to the health of our community. Best regards, Evan Frace, Greener Grounds.
Oh, great. That's great to know. I was
Yeah.
wishing
I also want to
reached out.
say, because I fielded a lot of questions about how we're going to handle this from now until after June, right? Like when this goes to voters, how are we treating this in April and May when they start applications in April? And what I have been telling people is that for now, not knowing what's happening in June, we're going to, from our office, is going to approach this, and they should approach it like June is here already, and do this way and not the old way. So you don't need to go currently, for the next 2 months, go out and place a sign every 50 feet. Just start as if this is in place. If this doesn't get approved by voters, which I assume it will, if it doesn't, I'll have to regroup with all the applicators, but we'll start then. But I think this is an appropriate path forward for both the applicators and townspeople so that people can get the property starting to get treated for some pests that people are really concerned about.
To that end, is there anything that we can do as a board to make that more official, that that's the town's approach
No,
to
there's
something that's
not.
already been
There's-
approved?
Because what would happen is Jeremy would issue a notice of violation. It'd have to come to all of you anyway
For
to
a
go to
consent
court.
agreement,
So,
right.
or a consent agreement.
Right.
So if they're not motivated to enforce it and you're not motivated to take it to the next level, then there's no concern about.
So technically on a violation, we have to give, we issue a notice of violation. We have to become aware of it, right? And then we issue a notice of violation. And then every time we issue a notice of violation, going back to like the last one we just were talking about, we gave them 30 days to respond, or 30 days to appeal. No appeal happens, but I have to get a notice out to that person, take some time. And then they have 30 days to appeal it. So before I even bring something to you, there's going to be a lag time of at least 45 days likely. So we're already out in June. Makes sense?
This is why everything in town is kind of a little on the
Take
dysfunctional
note of
side.
this for Chestnut Hill, please.
Oh,
More
interesting.
public comment?
Foreshadowing.
Just saying.
yeah.
We have
Did we have-
processes.
Public comment?
Paul or anyone? Let us know how you feel about this, about the change.
Paul McFarland, TikTok Inc. No, I'm very happy with the change. Just one detail was the sketch, I guess. Something about we had to provide a sketch, and I'm all about providing a sketch to the town. I don't think that providing it to the neighboring properties is critical. I think as long as you notify them that we're spraying, who, what, where, and when, and all that's fine, but to provide them a sketch, which we do anyways, and I can do it, but I just trying to take the privacy consideration aspect of it from the people, neighboring people. I think, yes, town, you've got them all, but the neighbors, as long as we tell them when we're spraying, what we're spraying, and all that, that'd be sufficient. But they don't need to know or see a picture of the properties and know that we're spraying underneath the deck or around the wood pile and things, even on the other side of the property. So that was just a technicality. So just a sketch, that's all. And then I think this is definitely going to be a learning year, no doubt about it. And be open. The only thing I anticipate, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, because I've sent a number of emails to Jeremy and whomever, is this portal thing. And we just went up to the state, I don't know, to last week or so, and we had a similar situation, which was going to address us statewide. And the gentleman that brought that to the front, he even mentioned that, electronic means of like a portal or something is a real efficient way of possibly going about this. This is obviously something that's going to be, it was big down south in the southern part of the state a few years back, and this is going to happen everywhere. And I just want to make sure that we could have avoided some of this. And you guys have been awesome to work with. You really have. And I thank you so much for that. But to work together when something comes up again in this industry, consult us, because we are privy to a lot of what is going on, what has worked, what hasn't worked in other parts of the state, and we can move forward and take and avoid some of these things that seem to crop up elsewhere. So, but that, like I said, the portal, if everybody can, because when we notify people, it's hard to a lot of them are summer, and it's hard to kind of get these notifications to someone. And finding the emails or mailing addresses can be done. It's going to be a little time consuming and somewhat problematic, depends on who. But if the portal can be just a source where we all can go, and we can, and I'm not a programmer and how we can incorporate it, but you can incorporate it for the people that we could communicate. The people who have issues can go in and can make complaints. Jeremy can kind of monitor that, and they can monitor what we're doing, and the people that aren't complying, because that's probably going to happen this spring. There's going to be some of the cowboys out there trying to do it, and it can be kind of a central location to address all that we're going to find out what's involved this spring. So other than that, I'm happy with how things have gone. I really appreciate it very much. And I'll sit there as long as it takes to make sure we get this addressed, because coming up shortly, we're going to, it's going to be, we want to be able to spray and not have to look over our shoulder and worry about what someone's going to come up and say. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, Bruce Richards, Central Exterminating. There was a thing on there about rodent baiting. Was that going to be?
Oh, that's still in there.
It's still.
It's exempt.
It's exempt. Yeah. So we're not going to have to do the
Road
state.
baiting and bait
Okay,
safety
and
exempt.
structural spraying.
Exempt.
That's exempt too. You didn't mention it. That's why I wanted to make sure. Okay. All right. Then I guess.
You're good.
And stinging insects
That's
is.
still in there.
Okay.
exempt.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys.
Is that worth the wait? 2.5 hours to get that question answered.
Jeremy, to address Paul's question, I guess the
Yeah.
line that he
Yeah,
is stating
I got a
about
fix
is,
for that if you want.
is the notice shall also provide a property sketch of the proposed application locations. It doesn't really say like to what detail that sketch is,
Right.
or it's
So
to scale, or
my
it's,
suggestion is, I can just add some language, and again, we're at the public hearing, so I kind of have to do it now, but, the notice that is provided to the town shall include a property sketch of the location of the application. That way, they just have to provide that sketch to the town when they submit that to us.
we don't have to provide, or do we have to provide any sort of leeway or parameters for what should be included in the sketch, or is
No.
envelope drawing okay as long as it's representative?
Yep.
Or we could say, to the abutter upon request, or I guess if it comes to
Well,
the
we'll
town.
have it, right?
I'd just
Town
like
will
to
have
maybe
it,
not
yeah.
have us have to do too much, but I doubt it's going to be that much of a,
I
You're
think
already
I
doing
think
the
it's
sketch.
important information to get, especially with the water resources that we have in town and the
right, for
concerned
us,
public.
yeah.
I think it's important to know where applications are being applied. And I think that was part of it. It wasn't just notifying abutters. It was also like the awareness of where this is,
Right.
where it's being applied in town. So,
So my question is, should we put any other additional parameters in there to what this sketch will contain? I mean, we don't want to be
all it says is,
grading art.
yeah,
or,
it says a
CAD,
property sketch of the proposed application locations.
and
That's fair enough for me. And if they want to submit a copy, a printed out version of the town tax map, which is readily available, easy to print, easy to email, they can just highlight the area with a box or a highlighter and send it in. Not
Okay.
a big issue for me.
Most people probably aren't going to do that, but
Well,
I don't know
we'll
if that's
see.
the easiest for everyone, but.
Yeah.
all right. I mean,
Okay.
we get sketches of.
I was going to
floor
say,
plans
we do see a range.
that are, yes, quite a range, and I just want to make sure
I will
people are
say,
comfortable
what was
with what the
encouraging to me,
expectation
there's a firm and Modern Pest is here. It sounds like they're going to go straight over to 25B exempt applications, which is fantastic. I mean, that is driving, we drove down that road. So Modern Pest is moving to remove their, they won't have, they'll be exempt because they're going
Yep.
to a greener, organic type of application.
So can
Sorry.
I have a motion to
Can I just-
approve?
A motion to approve, but I'm also going to, for the sake of discussion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Does that mean that we won't, for the exempt ones, we're not going to know what is being,
Correct. We're not going to know.
which was the whole point, kind of. But I would imagine that some of these companies would be willing to work with the town or the Conservation Commission or somebody that was going to do research later on to try to figure out, how much of this stuff is being applied in Camden or?
I would think so. I mean, I've
And-
met Paul and only known Paul for a little bit of time, but I mean, he is same with Central, and I don't know all of Central's work, but Paul appears to focus mostly on ticks and those kinds of insects. He's easy to work with. My gut says is he's going to be willing to share information. Evan, Frace, is that his name, from Greener Ground? My gut says is he's engaged and willing to share information. So I think we'll find.
We know they don't like this approach, so probably if somebody was going to do a
Right.
research project.
My gut says is they'll help get us information if we.
But
have
we'll
it.
still be getting a lot of information on the non-exempt
Because
things, so.
and there's an annual report that they give us.
Okay.
I just thought I'm Jesse Richards, Central Exterminating. Just thought I'd address your question a little bit.
Oh, thanks.
We have to report everything to the state annually. Right. And if a complaint or something like did come up, if people reported to the Board of Pest Control, they would send down an inspector. We have all our records show all that.
Right, so you're already doing that to the
square
state.
footage, yeah. And like even our maps, the maps that we do, it's going to show the building, a perimeter of where it was treated and the square footage and of how much you treated and how many gallons or ounces of chemical that you used.
And you're already doing that for every single property?
Yes. Yeah.
And sending it to the state. So it's already there if somebody, okay.
So,
Wow.
if it was ever brought up, this is the worksheet. It has it has the weather. It has everything on it. That's supposed
And the
to.
state already collects that, so if somebody truly
Yep,
wanted to.
yep.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. So,
That's great
it's
to know.
something that, if a company is following, the rules, should have all that information available for any job that has happened.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. This must be frustrating considering you're already doing all that stuff, so. Thank you.
It's happening everywhere, so.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Okay, 500. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Let's go on to the update on the snowball since Jeff has waited so patiently.
Poor guy. We choose to torture some and let's move these people up, but.
And we've got it all in our report anyway.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to share this information. I think it's important to start with a thank you to the Select Board and to the town of Camden for their support this season. Sunday marked our 64th day and marked also the closing of the season this year. So looking back at some of our old data, and I couldn't find anything, at least in the last 8 years, where we've opened as early as we did this year on December 14th. So this is the earliest we've opened. We had the triple chair open on December 23rd, which is about a month earlier than we typically do. Why I'm sharing that with you is I think it really influenced our performance, our results this year as it relates to what happened at the Snow Bowl. Between our season pass sales and our daily ticket sales and things like group passes, we sold over 13,000 tickets this year at the Snow Bowl. More than 700 of them were to Camden residents. 16% or about 2,000 people came from out of state and some of them out of country. And the other 84% were from Maine. We had the Indy Pass this year, which was new to the Snow Bowl, and that resulted in just about 380 visits as a result of the Indy Pass, and more than half of them were from out of state. That's great for the Snow Bowl. That's great for Camden. The folks that are coming from out of state are staying somewhere. They're also eating somewhere and buying things somewhere. So it's great to really, from my perspective, kind of think about not only the impact on the Snow Bowl when we have people that come from out of states, but really the impact on the area. We are fourth grade Learn to Ski program. We had 14 schools participate and 366 students this year. were able to come to the Snow Bowl and get lessons, tickets, and rentals. And then many of them may not have otherwise had that opportunity. So I think it's just a wonderful program and wanted to make sure we highlighted that. We had 5 different race and freestyle programs that had 85 different participants, and we had about 600 private ski and snowboard lessons and an additional 150 students or children that participated in group lessons. Little bit on revenue and expenses. And the numbers I had to share with you are as of yesterday, a little different than what's in the packet. But as of yesterday, we were at 98% of our revenue target for the year, and a little south of 109% of our expense target. We missed our season pass revenue by $64,000. We exceeded our daily ticket revenue by $131,000. So what's different this year than years past, we had about $100,000 more in daily ticket revenue than we did in season pass revenue, which from my perspective is incredibly encouraging. And when I talked about being open 64 days and I talked about getting the Snow Bowl open earlier this year, I would hypothesize that there's a direct correlation or even causation with the number of day tickets that we sold and our ability to have the entire mountain open for Christmas vacation week. That is something that we typically don't do. So I talked about the daily day ticket revenue, which is 143% of our plan. Our rental equipment, also another great indicator of usage at the Snow Bowl. We came in at almost 130% of our revenue target. There were a number of days this year where we sold out of rental equipment, where the demand for equipment was higher than what we could provide. I think it's also important to talk about some of the expenses. Our building maintenance expense was almost 130% of our target. We spent almost 30% more at maintaining our property than what we'd originally budgeted. And our people expenses came in at almost 115%. So again, more than we intended to spend when we put the budget together. One of the things I talked about with Audra very early in the season was our snowmaking budget for snowmaking equipment. The way we were able to get open early this year is we rented a booster pump, which I've talked about in the past. And we rented an additional fan gun, which produces more snow than other snowmaking equipment. So we spent $22,000 more than the original $3,000 snowmaking equipment budget, or we spent $22,000. Yeah. So, but again, when I think about it from the revenue brought in, I'm confident that incremental expense helped us to offset, or was offset by some of that revenue. Lift repair, we had $8,000 targeted for that. And at this point, we've spent $40,000, and I anticipate additional invoices for some late season work that's come in on lift repair. And I want to briefly, if I may, and very briefly, just talk about some of the benefits to Camden residents that occurred this year, because I think that's important when we talk about the Snow Bowl. The Wednesday Ski for Free program, and that's about $12,000 in benefit to Camden residents as a result of not having to buy a lift ticket to come to the Snow Bowl and ski for free. And depending on how you measure the season pass discount, whether it's from an early bird rate perspective or the total perspective, that benefit is between $50,000 to $60,000 to Camden residents in savings. And then when you couple that with the fourth grade Learn to Ski program that I mentioned, if the fourth grade Learn to Ski program were to pay a group sales rate for that, that's about $24,000 in revenue. And understand, I don't share that because I'm saying we should be charging for the fourth grade Learn to Ski program, but I think it's important that we realize this holistic benefit that not only we offer to Camden residents, but to the surrounding communities as well. Some of that will be offset by the ski club. The Ragged Mountain Ski Club provides a grant offset some of that expense every year. And we haven't finalized that yet for this season. They are expecting to certainly provide that grant this season, but I don't have the exact figures of how much of that will be offset this year. So there's an incredible amount of benefit to our community and to Camden residents. And so when we're thinking about, things like, well, how are we doing overall expense versus revenue? And we are a little bit shy, if you will. And I talked about 98% of the revenue target and 110% of our expenses. So naturally, there's some gap there. I think it's important to recognize the benefit to the citizens of Camden as we are talking about that expense. So, I know we've had a long meeting. I know we'll be getting together again to talk about the budget for next year, and I will have a lot more data to share with you at that point. But I, again, would just say thank you to the employees of the Camden Snow Bowl. Thank you to all the support that we've received from the town, and certainly to the select board and to you, Audra. So happy to take any questions.
Can you provide any summation of what you saw last night when you described the event for people that maybe weren't able to be there?
Sure. So very briefly, we had a public forum last night. We received a CORA grant, and part of that CORA grant paid for the development of a master plan. We hired SE Group in order to conduct that master plan at no expense to the town. It's through a grant. I think that's important to make note of that. Yesterday, we had 75 people show up to the Snow Bowl and spent better part of 2 hours with us talking about what they envision for the Snow Bowl. We really intended to tailor the conversation around the other 3 seasons and not necessarily about the Snow Bowl aspect of the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area. We received some great feedback, some great recommendations. I would say it was very well represented by what I would consider to be not only the public, but some of our constituent groups. We had folks from the Hosmer Pond Association. We had folks from the YMCA. We had folks from Maine Trail Stewards, the McNemba, the Trail Runners of Mid-Coast Maine. We had several members from the Select Board. So really a great representation, I think, across the community. Key themes were things like more maintenance at the property, making sure we continue to be good environmental stewards, but offering more programming. I think the number one, if I had to say, was beer, burgers, and bluegrass. Was seemed to be a common theme. But I think the fundamental thing around that was how do we bring more community center focus to the Snow Bowl and to the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area, so that it becomes a gathering place and it becomes a place for the community to utilize more than they do so today. But there was an emphasis on making sure that we are better stewards of the property and bringing more attention to that property as we think about how do we approach it going forward. Today, SE Group was still here. Jeremy and I spent the better part of the day, 7 or so hours with them, touring the entire Snow Bowl property. Every aspect of it, from the top of the mountain over to Tobogganville and the maintenance area. And then we toured the town. It was very important to them to see the relationship between the town properties, so the other areas within the town, and the Snow Bowl, to really be able to assess the full set of really needs and relationships between town properties and the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area. So we'll meet with them again tomorrow morning and kind of summarize of what went on. And we're also meeting with OSI, who, as you know, has produced the draft of the trail part of the master plan, and Ryan Gates from the Coastal Mountain Land Trust. And so we're all meeting together tomorrow morning. So I think as we think about the development of The trail system in particular at Ragged Mountain, the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area, it's important that it's really one congruent plan with also what Coastal Mountain is doing. And the good news is OSI is working with the Coastal Mountain Land Trust as well. So I'm very confident we will have one cohesive plan that will be considerate of really all of the land on Ragged Mountain. So hopefully that answers your question, Chris.
Thank you.
Susan.
I was curious, did I understand you correctly to say that the season pass purchase was way down, but the day ticket purchases were way up?
Yes.
And so what do you attribute that to? Do you think that people are unwilling to purchase a season pass because of unpredictable conditions? They don't want to gamble on that necessarily, but then they turn out and buy day passes?
I think it's a value proposition.
Uh-huh.
The last 3 seasons, we haven't been open more than 50 some odd days. Last year was 50. And I think you run a string of seasons together where you're not open for an extended period of time, and you're going to see more people buying day tickets. I think stringing a couple seasons together, weather permitting, where we can be open 60 plus days again, where we are focused on getting the mountain open when conditions permit. That's really what dictated this year. It wasn't, let's wait until Christmas week. We had the right conditions to make snow on December 1st, and that's what we did. If next year we have the right conditions on December 15th, that's what we'll do. If they're earlier, that's what we'll do. So, I think, being able to string together some seasons that we're offering a quality product for a longer duration of time, my hypothesis is we'll start to convert that into more season passes. But I'm very pleased with the day ticket sales. And if we continue this trend, the day ticket sales more than offset the loss in revenue.
That's what I was going to ask you. So
Yeah.
that met your projection.
Yeah, so we missed the day ticket revenue by 64,000, or the season pass revenue by 64,000. We exceeded the day ticket revenue by 140,000. So, and the delta between the two is $100,000. We $100,000 more in season pass and day tickets than we did in season passes, but the delta between the two, we recognized more money to make up for what we lost in season passes.
Get it. Great. And that was a wonderful event. I was glad that I was there to hear just from all the different constituencies that were represented. There's so much buy-in across the community. It was really impressive.
So much excitement.
Yeah.
And just the vibe.
You can't.
I'm sorry. I just got to say this. I mean, the vibe and the excitement in town about the Snow Bowl it's like I haven't seen since I've been here. I've been here for over 7 years now. So it's really, really awesome.
It just seems like there's been a generational shift of new families and, very holistically engaged with the facility, from mountain biking to using the winter sports to.
And there are probably a couple reasons for some of the change. One is the weather was amenable this year as compared to other years, for sure. And I think Jeff brings some positive energy to what's going on out there.
Yeah.
I was out there a couple of times talking with different people, whether they were visitors or talking to Jeff, some of the staff occasionally, and they can't speak better of Jeff and what he's doing and what the energy he's bringing to the different piece. And I think that helps things
time.
run well.
Yeah.
And yes, there was luck with the weather, but they did some things too that were different.
Yeah.
To make, I agree. I think keeping the big chair being open, to whatever it used to be, Tower 16. I don't know what it is now, but that's a big difference, to be able to have that compared to just the short one. But the positivity that he brought, I think that really helps It was definitely fun to be out there, even though certain things keep me from skiing downhill. But it was still nice to be able to see the other people out there enjoying it, and that was it's important because it does make us different. When I work all over the country, and I describe our town, and the ski area usually comes into it. It's a great place to be a kid here because of what it has, and the Snowball was part of it for me as a kid too. So it's a good thing.
What was really awesome yesterday, I just got to point this out. I had commented that I had applied for the grant, right, to get this core grant, and I got all this applause, right? And then I said, well, really, we got a manager out here, and the applause was even greater for what Jeff's done out there this year. So that was really good deal.
It's been a team effort and a community effort.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to be a part of it. I think we can do more in 3 other seasons, and that's what I'm committed to. Really, is I know I'm a data guy. I love data, but I also love to measure smiles and measure the happiness I see. And when I'm riding the chairlift with our guests and talking about where are you from, how do you like it, and just hearing. Oh, I come here because my parents brought me here when I was a kid. We moved to Connecticut, but I love coming back here. I love hearing those stories, and they're everywhere. And, in the morning, Wednesday mornings, when the regular crew comes rolling in and boots up, and I'm downstairs and talking to them, and, it's they're so tolerant of sometimes our less than stellar conditions that we've had there this year. But it's just amazing how much the community loves the Snowball. And it's, I want to do more about bringing that to all 4 seasons. And that's what we saw last night. And overwhelmingly, that's what we heard, is that there's a real interest in doing that. And I'll figure out as best I can how we get there.
Well, my 2.5-year-old granddaughter is obsessed with the Snowball. And now she'll say at any given moment, "What's Snowball doing?" And we say, "I don't know. Let's get in the car and go out there." So I spent more time. I haven't skied. I don't ski anymore. But now we're like, next year she'll be skiing.
Nice.
But I'm sure she's going to be asking us during the summer and during the fall, what's Snowball doing? We'll have to be going out and seeing stuff all year round. And I know we're going to be drinking a lot more hot chocolate and French fries at the Snowball while she gets up to speed. Oh yeah, she's going to be ready for all of it. But it's gotten us out there as a family.
It's great.
Yep. And she brought it up. What's Snowball doing? So we're on it. We're all over it.
Well, my Snowball story is I hiked up with my teenager who all of a sudden was very interested in spending time with his mother because he dropped his cell phone in the glades on the very last run, and it was getting dark. And I was like, oh, I'll just go with you. And he was so grateful that I did that with him. And we found the phone, and we had this very nice experience together, getting permission to walk up there with, because sometimes they don't like it when people walk up there. And I was like this hero, and we had this nice time walking. And
It's great.
Okay.
So thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience. It looks like you were getting a lot of work done over there anyway. So
No shortage of work.
it's always a pleasure to have you.
Poor Jeff is being hazed, like new employee has to hang out at the select board meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yes.
So now we're on to the other discussion item, which is the town support for commercial fireworks, which Tom urged us to bring up. We've got in the packet the,
So would you like me to summarize the memo?
yeah, my brain is just
Sure.
crashing.
So this has come up on several occasions.
Many.
Many occasions. So just as like a little bit of a reminder, so Chapter 83 of our code prohibits the sale and use of consumer fireworks, but the State Fire Marshal's Office is the entity that regulates the commercial fireworks displays, and that's Title 8, Chapter 9A. However, even though the town through our ordinance cannot regulate commercial fireworks displays, there are a number of things that we can do if the select board decides this is something that you do not want to have happening in the town anymore. So it requires a lot of town of Camden staff support to do pretty much any commercial fireworks show over Camden Harbor. The harbor master has to be very involved in the location of the barge, moving other boats out of the clear area. The police chief and police department have to be very involved because usually there's crowd management activities that aren't charged to anyone. The town is just doing it for free. And of course, the fire department, when it was on-call firefighters and we had to call people in for fireworks shows so that they were ready in case something caught on fire. So, and also, Windjammer Festival, that's a town event where fireworks were part of that event. So, you have a lot of latitude to instruct us by policy that you don't want us to participate in those activities because they do require quite a lot of town resources in order to have commercial fireworks displays, even if the town isn't the applicant for the show or it's a private event.
It seems like the amount of work has been increasing over the years, and for with all the barges busy with all these construction projects, it seems like every year it's like, oh, it's actually not going to happen because it's going to be impossible. And so, and then somebody behind the scenes is working to, like last year, I think we rafted 4 floats together, and it was the harbor master coming up with this innovative solution that all of a sudden it was back on. But, it seems like it's just getting harder and harder.
I mean, not to mention, it's complicated to figure out where to locate these barges. I mean, I think now we're a little bit more aware of the impact it has on, like, Curtis Island. The fire risk there is just so significant to locate a barge in the inner harbor. So I don't think that was taken as seriously in past years as it is now. So I think that all of these are complicating factors that mean it is a resource intensive event for the town to participate in.
So do you think that, Greg and I were talking about this before I came down, I was reading through the statute and just trying to think about the best way to proceed with this in order to, because I think that policy is only as good as its enforcement and who is doing the enforcing at any given time, whether, who's in your department. Would it be stronger, or would it be better for this to be a referendum? I hate to say it, but to go, to have it come to be enshrined more officially into the code in Camden? Or do you think that creating policy will be adequate?
Well, that you can't regulate it by code is what I'm saying, because that's the state's jurisdiction. So it's really going to have the same effect.
But even code to just pertain to what town, because I guess what I understand from the memo is that what actions we would take would have to govern what town staff would be able to do, right? And so you're saying that there isn't a way to like enshrine that in
Administrative policy, that is just as binding to us and what we do as an ordinance is to everybody else.
Okay.
I have a question about that. I hadn't thought of that, Susan. It's a good point. So Audra, if we were to codify that town staff will not support fireworks displays, you're saying that wouldn't be impactful, more so than just kind of setting a general policy for the town staff?
Oh, no, I'm saying it would be very impactful as an administrative policy, because, we're bound to follow that administrative policy in the same way. I think we focus a lot on doing things by ordinance here, or the code of ordinances. For something that guides, what we're doing internally here, the staff, administrative policy is just as effective for that purpose.
So
it can just be changed by a future.
Go ahead, Tom.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, isn't a code a little more I mean, it carries through from one board to the next. Whereas if we just give some administrative policy, it's really just restricted to this 5-member board that's going to change and potentially change in June.
True, but I mean, we're still working off, when I got here, we were working off a purchasing policy from 1998. And I was the one who brought it in front of the board to amend in 2018, and nobody's changed it since then.
So an administrative policy isn't something, it pertains to this board, not to the administration of the town overall. I want to just make sure I understand the distinction.
So an administrative policy, it guides how the staff do certain things.
Right.
And, there's certain things you can't put into a policy, but you directing us not to participate in organizing or implementing commercial fireworks displays would absolutely be something that would guide our involvement.
But
in
it would
that.
carry on beyond the
Right.
makeup of this board.
Right, it would only
Unless
change
another board
until another
decided to
board
take it up.
changed it.
Right, another board, right.
Right.
Which in some cases, you might want to leave some flexibility for certain things. Really, there should have had to be a decision at some point for the select board or somebody to say, we do want town staff to be moving mountains to try to make these
Right.
fireworks displays possible. That, I've never seen that happen, but for some reason, the culture feels this internal pressure to do it, and then they don't get clear direction.
Right.
But I think that just providing that clear direction that we don't want them to take extraordinary measures. If there's some private show that they need to participate in, I think that can still come to the select board at the time to explain what town resources are going to be necessary and what the impact is going to be. But the main ones are the ones that we're
Right.
putting on ourselves because of a history of doing it without ever any discussion about what the impacts.
So if a private entity came before us and said, we're putting on a festival, we'd like there to be fireworks, we're prepared to, obviously there'd be a fee schedule for them to, or we'd have to develop policy around that
I
if we were
think-
going to have a prohibition.
4th of July is a really good example. So that's not put on the town. It's usually, historically over the past few years,
Chamber.
the Camden Area Business Group, I
mhm.
think the chamber might have done it in the past. And, they raise the money to do the event, but they're very dependent on Steve to help with logistics. They're,
Mhm.
they're very dependent on multiple departments in the town. The town contributed financially in the past. So, that's the kind of thing, if we get clear direction, don't want you to contribute financially. We don't want all the staff involved in the logistics of organizing the event. They really can't do it.
Telling people to move their mooring, we get calls
Yeah.
saying Vinny has to move 4 boats off of moorings because of the fireworks.
The police closed down Main Street because of so many pedestrians. I
Right.
mean, there's so much.
Well, and
that
it
goes-
didn't
goes
even
so
get-
far beyond revenue because the environmental impact and the noise and the, all of the other knock-on effects that happen that we want to, and I think that's the largest part of Tom's concern, as I've understood
It is, yeah, thank you. I see, we're all concerned about the environment and environmental impacts and at every level of government, we have to kind of assess where we can have the greatest effect. And I think that at the level that we are, this is the sort of thing that we should be focused on. The state level is going to be a different, national might be more, carbon emissions or that sort of thing. But at this level, the municipal level, we should really be thinking about things that are very impactful right here in our harbor, on our land, and what we value in that regard.
So then would the next step then be to direct you to draft a policy for us to look at?
Yes, yes. And another thing with all of this, you know, say there is a policy saying you don't want to support commercial fireworks displays, conventional commercial fireworks displays in Camden, or however it
Or
ends
you
up.
use town resources to,
You don't want to use town resources. And just being very clear, your goal is that you don't want them here.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it, we can write a letter to the fire marshal's office saying the town of Camden does not want commercial fireworks displays here. And that's gonna make a difference to when people come to them for permits. You know, like it's gonna reduce the running around on that. Like they're going to be respectful of what a local community is telling them.
Mm-hmm.
right? Or we could say it in a way that's like, we encourage the moving away, to other forms of entertainment and
Right.
saying it.
Yeah, Ken.
No, I was just going to ask, traditionally, we have 2 fireworks events year after year. Is that correct? The
From what I've
Camden
seen,
Area
it's-
Business Group does 4th of July, and the Windjammer Weekend does whenever their weekend is.
Yeah.
Have we heard from either of those groups how central to their community celebration is the fireworks? Have we heard from those groups?
So I talked with Holly about Windjammer Weekend because she organizes that. And that's something they've been talking about getting rid of for years because they have to fundraise for it. And it isn't really central to that event.
And it almost didn't happen this time. It wasn't going to happen. And then
Happens every year, though.
Right, but then it didn't happen. And then there was, they worked so hard to make it happen. And then there were complaints about the show not being long enough. And I remember there was all this frustration.
That was 4th of July.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was 4th of July.
Oh, because the Windjammers sell tickets on the.
Just a quick question. Does the town ever get compensated for the extra effort that the employees have to do by the commercial agency that's putting on the fireworks?
No.
Thanks.
And I can't answer for Camden Area Business Group. I do know that, the uncertainty has been the thing that's been difficult for them over the past few years. Is this going to be supported? Is it not? That kind of thing, because they really want to do it in partnership with the town. So if they know that the town isn't going to be a partner or isn't a willing partner, they're pretty reluctant to do it because they don't want it to be controversial. They want it to be something that if it's going to happen, it's supported.
They canceled it last year. And then the only reason, because there was and it was going to make it so easy because they couldn't get a barge. But then we or somebody rafted 4 floats together in this. It really looked,
Well, that speaks to, it was a community effort and a community
Right.
solution for something that people wanted to have happen. I mean, so that there is that sentiment that it is a community event and people enjoy it.
But it was town resources that made it happen. And so I would at the very least like it to be very transparent when that is going on, because it's not just the community getting together. It's our paid employees who have to prioritize, at the end of the year when we don't get certain things done, but we do get this done, it all takes time. And that's not coming in front of any kind of public review so that we can say, all right, should Steve Pixley spend, 20 hours on this? And is it okay to park the explosives truck here? And not to mention who's going to be responsible for cleaning all the stuff up, all the stuff that washes.
So would this be a blanket policy, or is there some wiggle room if there is an exceptional event that we do want to support? I mean, or how would somebody address that? if they can't?
There's definitely, you're the ones, if you're setting a policy, you guys can always vote to do something that's counter to a policy that you've approved.
Right, but it would have, that's what it would have to come to us for review rather than just somehow magically happening in the background. I guess that's, because maybe there are certain circumstances where it should be supported, and I'm okay with giving a future board the opportunity to consider that. But I would very much like as a citizen to be able to come and say, because people every year, they're like, well, why are you doing it over here? Because this is where the osprey's nest is, or this is where the eagle's nest is. Did you check this? And it's all this trying to fact find after the fact. And, you know,
Given the amount of extra effort this requires, are there any positions that in the town you would want to cut because we're not doing this extra effort?
Commercial fireworks.
Because we're not doing, if we're not going to support the commercial fireworks displays, is it significant enough that you could then cut a head count because we're not doing this extra effort?
No, it's
be a
not
little bit of overtime, maybe. Hopefully that could be.
Yeah.
We'll have higher expectations for all of the.
For me, it's more of, I want certainty around what it is that you support. I don't want to do something that the majority of you don't support, or that you're divided on. And I have to listen to two different groups saying, why did you do this? Why didn't you do this? Like
That happens every year.
And this is the thing. And it's so operational until you make it something that is a policy. So until I have something from the majority of you saying, like, this is our stance on this, and this is how we want you to function and operate around this particular issue, you know, we're going to be pulled in the direction of the people who are very enthusiastic about this and expect us to help and want us to help, because that's where the momentum has been.
Is there a way that the town could be compensated if an organization wanted to do a commercial fireworks show, that there is no, you know, can they pay for the overtime? Is there a way to make that happen? If it's a matter of town resources, i.e. money, or causing somebody to work overtime, is there a way that a commercial entity putting on this fireworks thing could give back to the town so it's a no cost financially to the town? Is that possible?
We could bill them for it.
It's also the accumulation of I think there might be certain locations where that could be more relevant, but part of it for me certainly is the accumulation of all of the known and unknown chemicals in the environment that we're concerned with. So it's the impact on the resource, it's the impact to air quality. All of those things are much better documented than I had realized, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago when people started sending me articles about this. We know it's detrimental to the environment. We know it's detrimental to certain species. We know a lot of things. And I think in Camden, we can be creative about pursuing, all kinds of different things to entertain people with, natural and human resources that we have.
What's documented in this memo is about commitment of town resources, essentially. And so therefore, I would think I'd be supportive of firework displays because people do enjoy it. If that organization is willing to pay the town for the additional whatever, if you can quantify that, the additional whatever that goes into it. Fireworks for me, are they a big deal? No, not personally. Once you see certain things, firework displays aren't the big end deal. And I know that it does, harm and scare animals and certain people. However, if the issue is about town resources involved, I would think I'd be supportive of the 2 fireworks shows that we do if the town resources for the additional overtime is paid for as part of that commercial fireworks thing. That would be my take.
And that could come to us as a proposal. I think this policy would be about the town not taking it on independently, because the reality is that these 2 shows that happen are in some ways financially supported by outside entities, but the logistics end up coming down to the town. I think in the past we've given money by some of the entities, but then the town has to actually pay the fireworks provider. It's really the town putting it on, and the amount of energy that goes into it each year is dependent on the availability of things.
I'm a lot more concerned about the environmental impact, truly. I mean, I think it's way too easy to just keep saying, oh, it's a couple times a year, people like it, and I agree, people
A lot of
enjoy
people
them.
don't like it.
I've stopped going, and I really feel like the time for putting a line under these things is now. And to say we cannot take it for granted that this environment can keep absorbing and absorbing and absorbing, whether it's twice a year or, it's just, everything is cumulative, and we're seeing adverse effects from all of this accumulation. I mean, all this conversation about pesticides, it's all sort of part of the same conversation, I think. And so I would personally be in favor of a broader based prohibition. Not for that reason would be my underlying reason, but the cost to the town of human resources is an easier way to justify it. But I'm really tired of kicking this can down the road and just saying, people like it, let's keep doing it. Well, there are a lot of things that people like that are really harmful. And why aren't we could be the ones that stand up and say, we're going to do what we can to
Totally
not
agree.
continue.
I actually think there are a lot of people that don't like it
Yeah.
too. And when you start to talk about it and there's a lot of people really don't like the fireworks. I personally don't like the fireworks. I used to like them.
I don't think I think the state should the fact that the state doesn't allow municipalities to regulate this themselves is a mistake that the state is making.
Yes.
And I think that should be addressed at the state level. But like I said earlier, we do have an opportunity to identify our values, our community, our municipal community, environmental values. And I think this is one that we should stand for, which is the impact of fireworks is something that we don't support.
And if I could add, even though I talked about the human resources in my memo, that's just to give you an idea of a path you can go down if this is something that you don't want us to participate in. I think it's really important that I tell you the majority of the comments I get about the fireworks are complaints from people who aren't comfortable sharing it publicly because it scares their animals. They don't like what it's doing to wildlife. They don't like the litter caused by the ignition, all those sorts of things. It's the environmental impacts and people who are shy about sharing their opinion about it. But those are the majority of the comments that I receive about the fireworks displays. And so anyway, that's, I think there's more people behind the scenes that didn't feel comfortable sharing it that would say that. And you did get a letter from the Conservation Commission about this. But I didn't mean to just focus on human resources, because that's just by way of how we're involved and how our involvement would change what's able to be executed.
And I didn't ask for it to be put on the agenda because I was worried about the human resources. That's just the way the avenue that Audra has seen for quite some time to bring this to before the board as a potential solution. If we do decide that, the environmental impacts are something that we'd like to eliminate.
Right. And it is just from a practical standpoint, and for management efficiency reasons, being on the board for a while now, I've seen it be really draining on Audra and town staff to not have clear direction from the select board, and just the wasted time of her dealing with somebody like me writing an email and calling and saying, why are we doing this? Why wasn't this on the agenda? And then finding out, the chairperson said, this is operational, this should just go forward, and staff having to deal with that kind of conflicting guidance about like, why would this need to be on the agenda? Of course we make this happen. That's a waste of their time to be having all of these individual discussions. And so even if we, fall where we may on it, it's just makes sense for us to be providing, clear guidance so that they know the majority thinks this and we move forward.
I would find it far preferable, whatever the outcome is. I'm just going to say it right there.
So how about just a straw poll? Because what we would like to do is have, the next step would be to take a look at a draft policy. I would vote in favor of seeing a policy so that's 3. Ken, would you be in favor of seeing a policy around
I'd like to see a policy, of course, but I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I think that there are, what is in opposition to your environmental values? Is it community values? I mean, it's like having a bonfire on Midsummer's Night. Every community festival requires a great deal of effort ahead of time, no matter what it is, whether it's a parade at Christmas by the Sea, or whether it's Windjammer Weekend. And it does take community support, and the town is part of that community support. So are we reducing our community celebrations by knocking off this? I'm trying to come up with some kind of comparison, some kind of way to judge the relative value of fireworks. I do think there's relative value. I don't know how to, I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I mean, I've seen fireworks all my life. Maybe I've seen enough fireworks, but I do go to them.
I mean, I can say, every year this has come up. Discussion about alternatives has come up as well. So, I do think that there is an interest in that. I just think until it's just not going to happen until there's something that forces an alternative.
The other thing about this is that it does not eliminate the pathway for a fireworks proposal. It just says, it's not gonna.
Yeah,
I understand
I'd like to leave the door open somewhat.
Right.
And also I'd say, because we're just talking about developing a policy tonight. And now I feel like I have pretty good direction to go ahead and do that. I can inform Camden Area Business Group that, we're going to be talking about it, and the
That'd be
select board
great,
will have to
yeah.
vote on it. So,
Leave it at that.
when it comes time to make a decision, you'll have additional input.
Okay,
Super.
great.
Since it's budget time, it'd be a nice time to, we could always say, let's try to support it, the drone show finally that we've been talking about for years. Or
That didn't go over well in some part of the country. But yeah, I think that go on.
Everybody has their thing they don't
let's
like.
keep rolling.
Yes, they
Thank you,
do.
Tom, for bringing it again. I think we.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got these action items. I saw that the duck derby was tabled, right? So that's off. And these bid awards.
Thank you, Audra, for adding in the description for the bridge to this through the plan. So thank you for adding that to the packet today.
You're welcome.
This looks pretty, like a pretty simple lowest bidder. Thank God they came in at this. There's some that are lower than,
The budgeted amount.
right.
Yeah.
So-
Even under by $14,000.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll.
Right, in case
See
some
that
kind of
goes.
act of God comes along or whatever else is in the contract so I would move that we approve the bid to, is it Starrett?
Yep, Starrett.
Starrett Landscape Services for $386,052.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
This is also funded by part town, part state.
Yep, so it's an LAP project, so locally administered project. The state funds 50% and we fund 50%.
Excellent.
Yeah, I will say it's a shame that we couldn't use a temporary bridge that's sitting down in the public landing right now, and it's about the same size, to put it
Not
over
long
there
enough.
in Rawson Avenue. It's a shame we
Not
couldn't do
even
that.
close to long
Yeah,
enough.
So
the
is there
span's
any-
not close to long enough.
Okay,
That's,
Is there any performance guarantee, stare at snow and landscape? I mean, it says it in their titles, snow and landscape service. Are they bridge builders?
Yes, yeah, so we had, this, it has to go through the MDOT process. And so they had to provide performance bonds and references, and we contacted references.
they have a really strict process.
Right, we
much
have to
more
go
than
with
we
the low
would.
bid.
Right.
Thanks.
any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, and then the street paving bid,
So performance paving is the low bid.
And have they done, has Performance Paving done work for the town, and how did it turn out in the end?
Yes, they've done work for the town. So they had the contract, I think, a couple of years ago, and they've done other, smaller jobs for us.
And they're not, what I wanted to know is they're not the ones that provided the discolored pavement that caused Mechanic Street to be like two-toned, that
Yes.
made
that
all
was
the,
not them.
then the striping turned orange, and I had to answer questions about that for quite some time, so.
So, but basically you're saying that the town has done other work with Performance Paving, and it has been what has been needed, and it's lasted over a period of time?
We are recommending them as our,
Okay.
okay, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the paving bid award as recommended by the town manager.
And a
I'll second
second, all those in, any further
To
discussion?
performance paving, should we say that?
Performance
Just,
paving. All those in favor? All right, brilliant. And then we did the collective bargaining, we're all set. So now we just need to complete, will we do that before we adjourn? Yes,
You're going to need a motion. But
Okay.
Let me just go over the change. So what I've done is as promised, I've edited the interim order in the places that I think it needs to be edited and added some language, and I have that in clean copy. But I thought what I should do is just read to you the things I've added
okay.
instead of having you printing off.
Bill, can you turn on your microphone?
All right.
Oh, crap. Sorry, Tom.
I heard sort of, but I get the gist. of it.
yeah, but for the AI and for everything
Yeah.
that listens
Okay.
to us.
So I've amended the document as promised, and I'm just going to I have a clean copy for you to sign. But before you sign that, I'm just going to read the things that I have added. So on page 1, I needed a notation to reference what happened tonight. So it now adds to it, as you will see, on March 18, 2025, the hearing was reconvened by the Select Board, and the record was reopened by the Select Board to introduce a new exhibit, which was a purchase and sale agreement signed by Janice A.K. as the seller and David and Amy Lacouture as the buyers, which anticipates a closing on or before April 14, 2025. Additional testimony was also admitted from Kevin Hall as agent for Janice K. and Amy and David Lacouture. There is a video recording of this hearing as well. I have added in the exhibits introduced a number 11 and 12. Number 11 is the purchase and sale agreement of K and Lacouture dated March 14, 2025. And 12 is now a letter of engagement from engineering firm Thornton and Tomasetti dated March 17, 2025, which the Lacoutures gave to us. Then the order stays the same until we get to page 8, which is the end of the recitation of what the testimony was about. So this now reads, on March 18, 2025, the Select Board heard additional testimony from Amy and David Lacouture, which included their representations of multiple ongoing efforts to meet the requirements of the deliverables required in paragraph 1, sections A through H of the interim order, which begins on page 7 herein. They have engaged the engineering firm of Thornton and Tomasetti as reflected in the admitted letter of commitment dated March 17, 2025, at the anticipated cost of $42,000. They have retained and will submit a letter of commitment from a general contractor they represent as having 30 years of experience and who has constructed multiple buildings for them by the name of Milton Higgins. They advise that they have secured necessary financing or cash resources to perform the work necessary to remove the dangerous and hazardous conditions and will be able to meet the letter of credit or performance bond representations described in paragraph 1H of the interim order. Due to the fact that the locutors have now a legally cognizable interest in the premises, with an anticipated closing date of April 14, 2025, they have stipulated on the record that they shall be parties to this matter and shall be jointly responsible to comply with this decision and interim order as if they had been served with notice and participated in this matter. They have waived service of process of the notice of hearing. The presentation by the locutors and their described ongoing efforts have caused the Select Board to agree to extend the date of delivery of the items in the interim order, paragraph 1, sections A through H, minor typo, until May 13, 2025 at 5 p.m., by which time the deliverables shall be filed with the Camden Code and Planning Office. However, the deliverables shall be filed on a rolling basis as they become available. Then the next changes are, there are some blips where I have added, where it says K, there's also locutor's obligation for compliance in the various sections so that it says K or locutor. In some places it says and because that's appropriate. But either way, I think we're covered in terms of that they're both on the hook. And then I did add at the end, just for clarity, maybe it was just being tired, Amy and David Locutor are made parties to this action by agreement and shall, along with K, be subject to the requirements of this decision and interim order and shall be the primary responsible party in the event that they do complete the purchase of the premises and obtain title. So they'll be the primary on the hook. The interim order in the first paragraph now reads that K and Locutor shall have the opportunity to control the disposal of the building and makes clear that the K and Locutor take the following steps on or before May 13, 2025. And that takes us from A through H. And as necessary, the dates are all changed where it was April 1 to now read May 13, 2025. And then at the end of this document, I just clarified to say, at the hearing on February 18, 2025, first one, the Select Board generally outlined to K's representatives that the deliverables described above would need to be produced by April 1, 2025, the April 1, 2025 Select Board meeting. However, as a result of the hearing held on March 18, 2025, and the addition of Locutor as a party to this matter, the Select Board voted to extend the deadline for deliverables until May 13, 2025. And then the very last sentence says that this matter will be continued for further deliberation until May 20, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. So if that sounds all good, those are the additions.
Any subtractions like the second part of G?
Yes, I did subtract the second sentence of G, which now reads, if I can find it. It's just the first sentence. I took the second sentence out. And I do have one typo. I've got to change an E to an H on page 5, but I can do that after you sign it. If that's
Is the
okay.
building going to be marked with, I notice a lot of the time the town posts things that, on buildings that say something about it not being, occupiable, or this one doesn't have that I normally,
Well, look, I can talk to
See.
Jeremy about posting something tomorrow under his NOV.
right,
But
that doesn't,
the code that he cites for that does have provisions for placarding. So we
just,
put a notice.
it's nice to alert them.
Don't go in here.
Okay.
Tom, are you, I don't know which screen to look at. Should I email this to you for your signature tomorrow?
Yes, please.
Okay. And I'll just do the same thing I did before, which is we'll add it as a second page. And obviously this is going to be recorded the clerk will sign an attestation, and I'll just record this. It might be tomorrow, I guess, or will be tomorrow. That's everything I have. And if that's good, I'll pass it down for everybody to sign.
It does sound comprehensive to me.
Well, it's important. These are serious rights and issues. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Need a vote as well, or just signing?
Yeah, we will need
Can I
that.
make, no, we've got one thing that, that we didn't do.
Oh,
and
Chris,
I-
before you do that, before we forget, could you actually make a motion to accept this form of the interim decision in order? Decision in interim order. I'm getting punchy.
So
That
moved.
14
moved.
So moved.
So moved, yeah.
So seconded.
And so seconded.
Vote-
I think
vote.
we've
Do
discussed
we have
it.
to vote on
I
it or
think
not?
so, yeah. I think he's asking us
On
to
it?
vote.
I am asking you to vote. Thank you. At
Okay.
There we go.
least we got that officially.
Um, I was going to just maybe recommend
Oh,
that
my pen is-
the other items that we had moved to the end of the agenda was the reports,
Right.
but the town manager provided a written report. Can that stand as that without going into any detail there? You okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Is there anything she'd like to draw our attention to or the public's attention?
I did want to say something about Marlene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna,
While we sign.
while you sign. Okay, so I just want to recognize the passing of Marlene Libby. Marlene died on March 4th after battling breast cancer for over a year. She worked for the town for 35 years, most recently as our deputy finance director and treasurer. But in her time with Camden, she was also the wastewater clerk, back when that was a thing that we used to do, the harbor clerk, bookkeeper, and interim finance director. Interesting story. Marlene was trained to do her job by Nancy Betts, who is the wife of Steve Betts, who also passed away from cancer. And she trained Marlene in how to do her job in Rockland. So there's that, that connection that Marlene had. So everyone who works for the town knew Marlene. She was the person who administered pay and benefits and did a lot of HR work. So Marlene got to know every single town employee, not just as an employee, but very much on a personal level. So, anytime people wanted to take vacation, you have a change in you're going to have a baby, any big thing, people would go to Marlene often before they would go to anybody else. Marlene knew about people being pregnant before their department head knew, sometimes probably before their spouses knew. She just knew so much about everybody personally. Like I can't even, anybody who's worked for like a medium to large sized company with an HR person knows that, they just become integrated in everybody's life in a really special way, especially somebody like Marlene, who truly cared about everybody who worked here and wanted to, take care of them and do what was best for them. So she was always the one to organize assistance for employees in need. We had a few employees in our time here that had cancer and, needed, extra financial support, or they needed other things that we could help them with, like meals or to take care of them. We had a few people who passed away and their families needed help with funerals. And Marlene was always the person to organize that. She organized celebrations for people. She was just, I can't even tell you how important she was to just the culture of the town of Camden. She was really, really special to so many people. She loved children. There were a few times, like after I had my babies, where I didn't have daycare or I just couldn't bring them into daycare. And so I would have like a little tiny infant with me in the office. And Marlene, like, she came in when I first had that baby and she was like, if you have a meeting or you need to do anything, I want the baby. So Marlene was always the person, and it wasn't just me. It was Caitlin's children. Jody Richards has young children, and everybody, like Marlene loved children, and everyone's children always went and spent time with like Auntie Marlene. So, that was like a really important part of who she was as a person. Absolutely loved children. So we're all really grieving that she's gone. But not even close to what her husband, Bruce, who's the town sexton, is feeling from Marlene's loss, as well as her son, Daniel. So I'm sorry, I knew I wasn't gonna be able to get through this, but I'm just like, our hearts are broken for them. It was shocking, even though, we knew she wasn't going to make it. But, I just really want to acknowledge somebody who gave their entire life to the town. And, we're all devastated. So love Marlene. So sad she's gone. And she was just a really special person here. And it's unlikely that, you have somebody like that who gives 35 years of their life to an organization and is just so embedded in the fabric of that organization. So just want to acknowledge her and say that we love her and miss her and are devastated for her family's loss, because, we're feeling a loss too of a special person.
She also helps a lot of people through the death process too, thinking about them, helping them with cemetery plots, and as the secretary for the cemetery committee for many years, and just helping people navigate that process of figuring out where, graves are or where they could be. She's one of the first people to reach out to me even when I didn't know her very well after my sister died. She always kind of knew how to respond to death and helping comfort people through that. So thanks for sharing that, Audra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Select board reports, is that
Do
what
we have anything we want to report briefly? Can we be?
Yes, I just want to
really
very
concise?
briefly say,
Yeah.
Maine Maple Sunday, Camden Rockport Historical Society, tapping trees, one of the oldest traditions in Maine. We have a shared space with Camden and Rockport, so between 12 and 3 on Sunday. One of the Maine Maple Sunday locations is the Camden Rockport Historical Society. Kern Annis will be there manning the Sugar Shack. He's a very long-term town employee and a real character that could, if he were here, he would make us laugh right now, even though we're crying. He's full of good stories, so come and join us and get a tour of the grounds and stuff too. And it's a nice community event, 12 to 3.
Sunday.
Sunday,
Real
yes.
quick, Bill, it looks like there's 2 copies of the same document. Do we need to sign both or just the one?
Maybe 2 signature pages?
You gave us maybe 2 documents with, maybe.
Oh, did I double it?
I think you did. It's not, the good news is, the document isn't as long as you once thought.
Yeah, the thing, I had for 2 copies to be printed, and when I did the final one, I did 2 instead of 1. So if you'd all just sign 1 signature. page,
Okay,
that'd be great.
that's what's
Okay.
done. And we all did what we needed to do.
Licenses.
Nice auditing there.
Susan, somebody asked me the other day, this is a very busy time of the year for the select board. Are we anticipating adding any meetings? And if we are,
Any what?
adding any meeting dates? I mean, here we are at 10:30.
I
at
don't
night
think
after night.
so. I mean, the only reason we're here so late is because we had
Doubled
some
up.
big things that got carried over. I don't anticipate that it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I mean, I think, when it comes to sort of your review of the budget, and if you feel like you need more time, you can decide then.
Thanks.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to report? I'm going to forego.
Now, are we to make a motion for adjournment and then go into executive session?
Yes. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, or enter into executive session. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so moved.
Okay. All
Second
those in favor?
adjournment.
Are we supposed to say I think technically we're supposed to.
To
You
go
can-
into
we have to
executive
adjourn now
session.
and
I
then-
think we don't actually have to adjourn. We could just
Oh.
go into executive session and then.
I want to make sure we're.
So are we off the,
No,
we need to-
I think we.
are we no longer broadcasting before we go into
Right, we have to.
executive
We
session?
can adjourn and go into executive session pursuant to MRSA 405, Section C for real estate negotiation. And now somebody seconds and then we vote.
Just YouTube, because we need to keep Tom.
I mean, if we don't have to vote, then we don't have to vote, but I'll just, no, or you just implied voting?
You just voted to go into executive session.
I did,
That's
but I don't
correct.
know if
Yeah.
anybody else, okay.
I
Okay,
think it was.
Okay.
without objection,
All right,
can I
take
just
those
run
off.
to the bathroom really quick? You guys can start without me.
Sign those.